evening and welcome to ELOsoFumarTakes. This is our 303rd take, live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star Studio of Azle, Texas. I'm your host, Barry Duplessis, as always, and I'm so proud, so pleased, and so privileged to be with you all tonight. This is going to be a fantastic show, a blast from the past, but from a new era, everything begins. We just had our 300th take just a few weeks ago, so the new eras are starting all over the place, and I'm pleased to bring one of my very finest friends and the beginning of his new era here tonight. But before we get to formal introductions of our guest of honor, we do have to thank the people that make this show possible. And that, of course, is our sponsors. And tonight's show is sponsored by Drew Estate. Drew Estate is at it once again, is firing up the cigar world with the announcement of the Herrera Esteli Tienda Exclusiva Inctomes exclusive 2024 release only at Maximar and Small Batch Cigar. This unique edition comes packed in newly designed box packaging, setting a new standard in exclusivity and collector's appeal. The Herrera Esteli Tienda Exclusiva Inctome, known for its bold blends and captivating stories, continues to be a symbol of innovation and craftsmanship under the Drew Estate umbrella. Crafted with precision and care, this latest release is poised to deliver an unparalleled smoking experience to aficionados around the globe. Key features of the Herrera Esteli Tienda Exclusiva Inctome include a dark Ecuadorian Habano wrapper, Honduran binder, and Nicaraguan filler in a 6x46 box-pressed format. Get prepared for a full-bodied experience. And that is the latest from our friends at Drew Estate. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And if you're tuning in on Facebook Live, where we broadcast live every Sunday night at 9:30 Central, or listening to us later wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure you download, subscribe, and review today. Tonight's audio broadcast is brought to you by Grand Habano Cigars. Honest, compassionate, great cigars. Be sure you download, subscribe, and review today. And without further ado, we welcome for our 303rd take. The introduction of tonight's guest is sponsored by United Cigars. Smoke one today and start living United, Mr. Jon Carney of Bentley Tobacco. Jon, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic, Bear. Thank you for having me. For those that don't know, this is our second Sunday in a row that we spent with each other.
It's true.
As you were in Orlando for your day job last weekend, so I'm honored to be back. And you've got rain where you're at, but I don't have rain where I'm at. So I'm winning tonight, but fortunately you're in a garage and in your studio there, so that's a win.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so we actually happened to spend some time together last Sunday, which was nice, and it ended up raining. And then my girlfriend commented on the fact that the last few times that we spent together, it's been raining. So it was it's kismet a little bit. So it's fun.
Yeah, it happens. Hey, I at this time of the year in Florida, it's surrounded by rain. Even so, what they do is for really the most of the summer, but the last few weeks of August, they have no clue what's going on. So you'll start every day, and it's going to say it's not going to rain for the entire day. Then it's going to be, well, there's a big system north or south of Orlando, and we're central. So we aren't too far from the coast on either side, so it can change. But it literally every single day at about 3:30, 4 o'clock, it just starts to show up, and you get a few hours, maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours of rain, and then it's over. I have a little wading pool at my house behind me, and it put in about 100. I'd say it added about 100 gallons of rain in it today, which is kind of crazy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like it holds like 450 gallons, and I had it about 2/3 full, and it's right to the top. So they got almost 100 gallons of rain in there today, which was nuts. Yeah, really nuts.
Wow. We're also officially old because that's how we're starting the conversation, is talking about the weather. I just want to point that out, but that's okay. That's okay.
I was listening to a little bit of your last show that you had. You had a couple, you had a week off last week, and you had Jeff Hogan on, and you were talking about. He'd asked you early on, what do you have in your cooler? What do you give your cooler? You're like, well, mostly sparkling water because you think it's going out of style and you drink a ton of it, and you said, well, I naturally, and also, I never really drank a ton, but you were like, but I drink less than I did before. So we're both older because I used to drink a ton and now don't drink as much as I used to before. And we're talking about the weather.
Yeah.
So we are headed in that direction. But I'm just going to tell you, we are still young.
Yes.
People still consider us young. We're still not the older guys in the business. We're right in the middle and a little bit towards the younger side of the middle, fortunately. but the industry is getting slightly younger, but we're not old yet. We're not old yet.
The next topic for everyone, we're talking about gas prices. Actually, no, just kidding. We are going to be smoking cigars tonight, John. You've already lit up. We'll talk about your cigar in a second, but I've
Yep.
got some choices here for you, I have a feeling that you're going to choose one of these newer cigars that I have in front of me, thanks to you. But I decided to pull out some gems just to, for the sake of nostalgia and glories past and everything, and so I'll go with those. I'll show you those first. But as always is tradition here, you get to pick my cigar. So I have a La Flor Dominicana double press from 2011. I have a Suave Maduro from 2015. And then I also have a Ligero Tubo 250. This was from 2018. The date's a little fuzzy on it. But something newer from the cigar gifting gods, that would be you, sir. I'm really excited about these. I have Bentley Tobacco, the Churchill, and I'm guessing this is the Robusto, also in the same blend, and then also the white in the what is the Corona, and all look exquisite. So I'm really excited to smoke whatever you asked me to smoke tonight, John.
This is a tough one. So we're probably going to have two cigars, right? At
Oh yeah,
least,
definitely.
potentially. Sorry for the zoom in there. All right. The man, how often do you date all of your cigars?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's great. I don't, and I'm when I'm on the show with you, I'm always annoyed that I don't, because I have kind of an idea when they were based off of kind of when they came out. But you have some stuff, and a lot of it, you have a lot of regular production cigars that you could, if you grabbed one today, you can maybe see some visual differences with it. But if
Hmm.
you store them right, not really, right? So I have some products like that too. A lot of the cigars I have now are like one-offs. I will have like one or two cigars of something where I smoked down to the last one or two and then saved them. But I have some regular production items, and that's a fun thing to do, to have the age on them, see how they change. Because you really
Yeah.
enjoy a cigar, why not keep it aged and know where it's at? I have no clue where any of those are from, or whatever the time frame is on the ones that I have that are regular. They could be anywhere from, you know 2011, especially with LFD products, anywhere from like 2010 to 2011 to last, to July
Last year.
1st. Or even now.
That's crazy.
So I have nothing. So it's great that you have those dates on those things, because there are some products like that, and a lot of them cigar really. When I say products, I mean not just cigars. Same thing with kind of like wine. So you think if you collect wine, you always have the date on it, the vintage date.
Right.
Um, if you got bourbon, what the oldest liquor in there is, the oldest juice. With a cigar, you don't, unless you have it on the box. They have a box
Mhm.
code or something like that. So, but individual cigars is a great thing to age. So you always got some cool stuff, and I appreciate that. But I was gonna grab. I'm like, I'm going on with Bear. What should I grab? By the way, this is my first cigar of the day. I was at Disney Springs with my family all day. Um, so I was like, he's gonna bring some cool stuff. I'm like, I think we're
I
gonna smoke
I
multiple
actually
cigars.
point to your history though. Like I actually have I bought when we first got the first box delivery of Diggers and the first box delivery of for LFD chapter ones. I bought
Mm-hmm.
two, and I still have the other one. I smoked one and then I kept the other one. I have both of those
Mm-hmm.
somewhere and deep
Great.
deep in the archives. So yeah.
So I'm gonna say, just to not stop you from lighting up, I'm gonna pick an LFD second for you.
Okay.
But you and I did smoke Bentley together on Sunday. Do you remember which blend I gave you? Did I give you the Connecticut, or did I give you the green or the white?
The green.
Okay. So I want you. Have you smoked today?
No, actually I haven't.
Okay. I want you to light up the white Corona.
Okay.
I'm gonna smoke the green Robusto. So the green Robusto is the green line. Here in the U.S. is four facings of each, so it's Corona, Robusto, Toro, Churchill. Now we have more lines to expand. Obviously, we're starting at zero here, so we're going to be We'll get into that a little bit more. But the Corona in the in the white, which is Ecuador, Connecticut, has been the one that I've been the most drawn to in the last like 2 weeks. So I've been, we've been working together now for a little over a month behind the scenes, and so we'll get into that stuff. But the first thing I was drawn to, because I worked for a very full-bodied cigar company for 14 years, and Dominican Republic, right? And I smoke a lot of Nicaraguan, but not on, not a 75 to 80% of everything I smoke, if at the minimum, was Dominican tobacco and real full and robust. So the first thing I was drawn to was dark and the green. So I started smoking that, and I don't know if it's because my experience with Nicaraguan tobacco on a daily basis was so limited, um, or that my palate just was open to changing. For whatever reason, the Connecticut just was like the one that hit me, and I don't smoke a lot of Connecticut at all. Like,
Yeah.
I like Davidoff a lot. I enjoy it, but I don't really smoke the milder Connecticut's. I don't smoke a lot of that, a lot of their milder cigars. I tend to still up in strength on a little bit and go towards more of their medium. But the Connecticut was kind of the one that I was drawn to the most. And I also, for some reason, in the last 2 months, started smoking smaller cigars. And I think the reason why is I smoked for work most of the time, right? So if I was going out to work and I'm visiting 4 or 5 accounts a day, I'd grab like a Toro or Toro size, and I'd smoke it on, over a period of 2 or 3 hours over a few account visits. Um, and it was, I tend to smoke faster when I work. So I've been drawn for some reason to the smaller sizes too. So I know every cigar maker, you got a lot of people on like, oh, we all smoke smaller sizes, this and that. And I think a lot of people do. But at the end of the day, that most of the pictures that I see people posting online that are representatives of other brands or running or own their own brands, a lot of the time they're posting pictures of Toros, Toro sizes that are larger,
Hmm.
60 ring gauge stuff. Because in the niche parts of the market, that's what really sells well. Um, and I think another reason why I started smoking smaller sizes is this is a European based company. So the first cigars they came out with were really, more traditional sizes. Like this is a real traditional Robusto. It's a 48 ring gauge by like 5 and a quarter. And, it's a traditional Corona. It's not as long, but a narrower ring gauge. So it's real traditional, like European Cuban sizes. Um, and obviously there's Toros, there's Bellicosos, there's things like that. But I was just drawn to it because it was so different from what I smoked, and the Nicaraguan aspect of it, of transitioning my palate from if I smoked, if I smoked 35 cigars a week, 30 of them were Dominican and LFD, and the other five were separated from other things that I liked. I
Yeah.
never really just, on a daily basis smoked a ton of Nicaraguan cigars. So it's interesting to me that I'm smoking more Connecticut now than I ever have. And then I'm tend to be a little more drawn to the smaller sizes, and I'm also taking my time with them more, which seems different. So I've become a different
Good.
person, I guess.
Well, that's good. You should enjoy a little bit more. And I think it's also because it's new too, so you're wanting to, to really acquiesce, like you said, not that you didn't smoke other cigars outside of La Flor Dominicana before, but like, you've been smoking a lot of the same things for the last 14 years. And so like this is a new age of exploration that kind of just allows you to kind of sit back, relax, and enjoy. I've lit up my Bentley White, and I used my DuPont Fluo lighter with the electric orange accent. So this is a quite the occasion for and is
Hey,
worthy of lighting
I
it up
lit,
with a DuPont.
yeah, I lit with. I'm trying to think the ping that my noise canceling headphones sound like it's not working. I lit up with the Declaration of Independence.
Oh, nice. Line two.
Yeah,
Those are gorgeous, man. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
yeah, I love it, man. It's honestly is my first DuPont, first line two. I have first and only line two. I have another DuPont with like the flat flame on it. I can't remember what it's called.
The
But
slim. Yeah, those are
yeah,
great.
listen, I actually bought it in Texas uh, at Michael's, and I really love the Declaration of Independence. Everybody knows I love red, white, and blue stuff, but I think it's hilarious because I'm going to be using this quite regularly. So this is the brand Bentley is synonymous with a couple different things. We'll get into that more, but um, people associate it's a European company owned by a German brand, owned by a German family that's now in the United States, and I'm lighting it with lighting it with an American flag cutter,
Exactly, man. Right.
American flag lighter. So it's
Mesh cultures.
we're really Americanizing this brand and its philosophy, one cigar at a time.
Mesh of cultures, absolutely. Well, let's get into it because there's a lot that I want to get to tonight. And so let's get into tonight's major point, which is always brought to you by Gran Habano Cigars. From the fertile lands of Honduras, George Rico and his family have put together the very best vintages for you. Yes, you, the cigar smoker. From value-based hits like Corojo Number 5 to the award-winning 20th anniversary to special projects like Zulu Zulu, Gran Habano is about cultivating the best and making pinnacle cigars for the market. Culture, tradition, quality, premium, handcrafted, Gran Habano cigars. So, John, you kind of alluded to it already. We at the beginning of July, you said you bid adieu to the last 14 years of your dedication to this industry by departing ways with La Flor Dominicana. There's a couple of questions I think that we have to ask. I know you've kind of answered a few. I know you made an appearance on Smoke Night Live just a couple nights ago for, I guess, the debut pre-release press release about the major announcement that we're going to be getting into as well. But I was curious. I mean, as you look back on 14 years, I mean, what stands out to you as like what stands out to you as the most memorable and moments of the 14 years in the cigar industry?
That's a really great question because initially my thought in life was, my plan in life had nothing to do with premium cigars. That wasn't something that was even on the table for me, part of any of my existence until I really had got into college. And I went to college down here in Orlando, and where I currently live now. And Corona Cigars is down here, and that's where I started smoking. And we started smoking when I was in my junior year, sophomore junior year of college when we really got into it. We were smoking cigars my freshman year quite a bit, but I lived in the dorm, so it was pretty limited areas where you could actually smoke. But the year I moved down in 2003 was the year that they stopped. Right before I got here was when they stopped having smoking and non-smoking sections in restaurants down here. So it was still pretty friendly state in regards to smoking, which it still is to this day too. But I started kind of getting a passion for it, and it was something I enjoyed doing because Corona was the ultimate cigar experience, and it really is. And that was really where my love for it and passion and enjoyment and they kind of the aficionado side of it. And I still didn't think it was like a job. So memorable experiences for me that one of them was, before I got into it, I had a relationship with Lito's son, Tony, and he was a sales rep for us at a store that I hung out with. And I was going to that store because I was in grad school at the time, and it kind of filled my time. And I was into cigars after I graduated, and I made it to Corona every time I could. And I had some friends that we'd smoke with, and we'd smoke while we were not in class, but when we were in college. In between classes, we'd go to Corona because I was in hospitality management, so we were on the on the opposite side of UCF, and UCF being the second largest school in the country in terms of enrollment was it kind of takes up a big portion of the other side of the city, but there's little satellite campuses, and our hospitality program
It's such an
is over
unknown
right in
fun
the thick of
fact
things.
about UCF is that like it's the
Yeah,
second largest. It's nuts.
it
No one
is.
gets
It
that
is.
question right.
No, no, never. It's massive. It's like right behind Arizona State or something like that. And by the way, they might have passed them at this point, but even if they have passed them, it's still the same thing. Nobody would ever guess it. And it is. It's just beautiful. A ton of money. It's growing, and they have a medical school over there now, and it's one of those few things that like your degree. Once you're usually done with your degree is important for like your first job. And the further it goes on, and my career 20 years later, it's cooler to say I went to UCF now than it was 20 years ago. Um, So a fun moment was when meeting Tony was a time where I was like, you know what, this could be something that'd be fun to be a part of, and a unique career. Unfortunately, unfortunately and fortunately, when I was in grad school was when the housing market tanked with the subprime loans, and Florida was one of the spots that just got hammered with it. So the economy kind of took a dive, and really people weren't hiring too much. And I just come out of working for Darden restaurants for 2 years as a manager for them out of college. And, I wasn't really desirable, 24 years old, 23, 24 years old. Um, Been a manager in Olive Garden, grew up in the restaurant business, but really, just 2 years experience out of school. So it was kind of like starting over, and the economy was brutal. So I was like, I'm going to go back to grad school. So I think one of the first real unique moments was I remember sitting with Tony after the Airbender Chisel got the number 9 cigar of the year. And that was in 2009. It might have been 2010, but I think it was 2009 that we're sitting together. And um, he was on top of the ice cooler behind the little bar we had. It was this shop called Havana Sensation that I hang out at. That's not in business any longer, but I still keep in touch with the owner. The guy's become a great friend of mine. And we just sat there, and it was to that day, it was the most cigars I'd ever smoked. And I remember I hadn't smoked a lot of LFD at the time, and I had 14 Airbender chisels during our event, and we did an all day thing. And Tony got there like 3 or 4, and we were there till 1 or 2 in the morning. So at the end of the day, he goes up to grab his box of cigars, and he's like, he just had it on the background. He's like, "Hey man, like what happened to these?" I was like, "Oh dude, I've been smoking them all night." He's like, "Well, I was just having them back there, to take it easy, and I didn't really think you were going to smoke that many." And I was like, sorry, man. I go, they were really, really good. Until this day, it was the most cigars I've ever had in a day. It was 13 cigars. And that was a fun moment to meet him at the time and do the event with him. And that turned into a very close relationship, obviously, over the years. But that was a great moment of getting into it. And that was really where it sparked my thought of like, wait a minute, this is an actual job that you could have. And then, fast forward a year and a half after that, it turned into a 13-year executive career in the industry, and a lot of great experiences. But that moment particularly was a fun moment when I realized that it could be something that I would like doing. And then the second moment was the day that I ended up getting promoted to VP of Sales, which is a very long story, which a lot of it's not for public consumption. Nothing bad happened, but a lot of intricacies and
A lot of stuff
and
behind closed
different.
doors. Was
Well, yeah, it's some of it's behind closed doors. The people that were even opening doors for me aren't even aware of what was going on behind the door. So there's a lot of reasons that things worked out the way they did, and it's not what people would think. I'm sure everybody has their own opinions because there were some real prominent people and really good people in the business that worked there. So there was no funny business going on with the way that it worked out, but
well, can you
there
talk
was some
about that a
unique
little bit, John?
situations.
Can you talk a little bit about how like I mean, you rose to the top pretty quickly, and I mean,
Hmm.
regardless of the circumstances, like I mean, you spent more time, I mean, some like 7 times the time when you weren't VP than you were VP. Like, so like, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. Before I became the vice president of sales, the longest anybody had ever been vice president of sales for was a year and a half.
oh,
Okay,
okay.
and the longest anybody had been a salesperson for them was like 3 or 4. It was like 3.5, 4 years. So I don't have any record for sales rep because I was there as a year and a half as a sales rep. I'm the Northeast sales manager. But after the first year and a half, and I got to year two, I joked around internally with myself. I was like, every day I wake up, I'm like breaking a record here. Um, and then it got to like 10 years, and I'm like, wow, I've been here for 10 years. Wow. Then it was 11, then it was 12, 13, and then 14. The 14th year started in June of this year. So it was yeah, man, it was wild. It said you as you said, it's like 7 times, or it was more. I think it was like 8 or 9 times more, 900 times longer than probably 900. I think 900. It's late at night. It's 9 times. Yeah, it was really impressive. So, it's interesting, and that's not a knock on anybody. We just were aligned on a lot of issues, and we were aligned on a lot of what was going forward. When I took over the position, they had two sales reps at the time. It was me and someone else. Um, so I moved around a little and rebuilt the sales team, and I think we did a very, very good job with that. We had, I've talked about this before that a big, big moment for me of pride was when we got to 2019 and we'd had all the same sales managers in the team. The least tenured sales rep we had was 3 years, and the second one was 4 or 5, and then we had a reps that had been there 5 or 6, and we had one that was there that was just started right shortly after I began as the VP, right before he started as a rep, and he'd been with us. At the time of he ended up resigning in the last month or so, but he'd been with the company for 13 years, so it was really interesting, and I had a lot of pride when we got to 2019 uh, having it be a spot where there wasn't really a direction of how it was going with the sales managers. Then we as a team between Lito and myself and the team, built a really great group of guys, and we had great
Yeah.
reps all over the time, all over the place. It was just
You
you gotta
always
have vision
have.
and direction.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
company's always been
they
great that way.
always did. They had, but you just gonna have direction for them. So I feel like there just wasn't direction back then, and what the next steps were. Not that it was negative. It was just things are going really well, but if you still don't have a direction, people aren't going to be sure what's going on, and there's going to be uncertainty. So I had a lot of pride in building the team that way, and then also after during COVID, it was relatively public that there was a sales force drawback, and whether that was because of COVID or not. It wouldn't have been that way without COVID. In reality, and that was it. Kind of derailed a little bit of the thunder that I had going for about 8 9 years, and then we spent 2020 to 2024 slowly trying to rebuild that, and it was different after that because that group of guys was a great group. Um, Obviously, there's always weak links and whatnot, but there really wasn't anybody that was a weak. Everybody was performing. Some at different levels than others, but there was nobody that wasn't performing, and it was really great times, man. We had Cigar of the Year in those times with the Andalusian Bull, the Cigar
Yeah.
Aficionado. There was a lot of new releases that came out. We celebrated 20th anniversaries during that period of time, 25th
25th.
anniversaries,
Now
and
30. Now
now the
30th.
30th.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say.
yeah. So it's I went through. I was part of their 15th, 20th, and 25th anniversary, and technically part of the 30th. So
Yeah.
there was really really some fascinating, great stuff that we did there, and there was a lot of pride in that. And I would say for me that taking that and building a really solid team. In a situation where there hadn't been a lot of consistency, there was a pat on, was a star on the board for me personally, and something I took a lot of pride in, and I think that had a lot of, I think that resonated a lot with retailers too, where it was, the supply and the demand, and for distribution, the demand for the product exponentially grew over that period of time. But the communication and the support that was given and the consistency of having people year after year after year, I think really gave a great image to the brand. And honestly, I'll tell you this: the last couple days of the reception, I'm not getting ahead of myself. There's a lot of hard work ahead, but the reception that was given uh, to what happened, to my announcement on Friday with the purveyors and obviously the highlight of Bentley was fascinating. I mean that obviously that resonated with the industry, and I kind of was in my bubble for 14 years, and I watched everything from the outside. The last 2 months have been really educational, but I will say the support in the last just 2 days has been impeccable. Um, and it was good, and I think that was a huge testament to how we built those teams, and how we did things. And in the process, I had to do things that were my job, because that's I got paid to do those things as an executive. So in 2020 when COVID hit, that was a really challenging time. I didn't want to have to lay anybody off. Unfortunately, it turned out to be the best years ever for every cigar company in the world. But when the
Yeah.
factories were closed for 2 or 3 months and there was no cash flow, nobody knew what was going on. And I'll tell you one thing I always have is plans for everything and multiple plans. And one of the plans was chosen, and that was the direction that it went. So that was one of the more difficult times for me,
I wanted
mainly
to ask about
because
that, John, because
yeah,
you
dude,
we're
I
going to
was
talk about your
derailing.
yeah, we're going to talk
Yeah, I
about
was
your leadership.
derailing
So
8 years of effort,
right.
and it was friggin' brutal, dude. It was like, all right, what's going on? And hey, the farm's closed, factories closed, the borders are closed, everybody's getting sick. We don't have bonded warehouses, so we didn't buy like 2 years in advance and have cigars sitting there. So for LFD to do business, it needs to be imported into the United States from their farm and factory. So yeah, it went from cash flow to no cash flow. And like, what do you do? So there was no right decision to be made. In retrospect, you could look back and say, hey, it ended up working out well. And I told people during that time, if they were angry, you can blame me on it. My that was what my job was to do, and I'm not placing the blame on anybody one way or the other. But if people needed that for some closure, that was fine. But I did take a lot of pride in making sure everybody found a job, and we had everybody that went a different direction, and not by choice. We made sure they found jobs with people, and it worked on there. And so I was proud about that. But
Well,
it
that's good.
really was. I mean, it derailed like 6 or 7 years worth of really solid effort, and really changed the dynamic.
I listened to a recent interview from you where you talked about how you were a storyteller, and for 14 years you told a lot of great stories, and some of them weren't necessarily yours. They were just stories. They were the stories of the Gomez family, right? And but was there ever a point like, obviously it might be difficult to look in hindsight, but was there a point during your tenure where you're like, oh, this is I'm going to do this for a lifetime. Like this is I will always be John of LFD, or will like did you ever see yourself going in another direction? Obviously now, but like at the let's say in the middle of your tenure, the height.
I had I had religiously said, um, everywhere, if you watch, it was pretty consistent that I really had no desire to to be anywhere else, and I really didn't see myself anywhere else in the industry, just because I was aligned with the concepts, and I was really, you know it was built into me by my own, just because I really aligned with the concepts of what was going on in the factory, what was going on with the concepts of the focus on quality and consistency. So when you're in that moment, it's impossible, if you're happy with it and things are going well. It's impossible to even think of that. To be realistic with you, it's not. No, that wasn't something I thought about. There's companies, people go, "Oh, would you work for this person?" Yeah, I guess, but like, why? I'm doing well here. We're growing. Everything's going great. For like, what rock the boat just for the sake of rocking the boat. Um, and yeah, no, it really wasn't something that crossed my mind often. Um, if anybody says they're not ever thinking about it, they're definitely lying to you, or they own the company.
Right.
But I'll tell you, if the people own the company, they're probably thinking about it more. Like, what would I do if I didn't have this, or what if
What
what
happens
if I
after I
could do
sell this
this?
company, even though I'll
Yeah, what
never
happens
sell
if
it?
I
Yeah.
sell it? Yeah,
Yeah.
or what happens if I get hit by a bus? Do my kids carry it on? So there's always some sort of a thought. So yeah, you do think about it. You look at it. Hey, it's a great company, and or there's people. So how I channeled it, instead of thinking about it that way, which I really didn't, for the most part, was like, I just like, oh, there's cigars I like smoking. So I smoked more brands that I enjoyed, people that I had good relationships with. Tom Lazuka was a really good friend of, is a really good friend of mine. So I smoked a lot of Asylum. I had Michael Herklot's a very good friend of mine. So I smoked Nat Sherman. Then when he started his brand, it became something that I spoke highly of it, nice, because I liked it. So there were companies. I like Davidoff quite a bit. I really do enjoy a lot of brands, and I enjoy a lot of the people in the industry that run those brands. So I try to mostly speak positive on all of it, and I think that was kind of my way of being like, hey, I don't see myself going anywhere. I don't see myself being part of anything in the cigar business. I've always said if I were to leave, I would probably go do my own thing. And I guess I just didn't realize what that would be. And naturally, after almost a decade and a half, it turned into, all right, like, what am I doing here? Like the value and the effort that I put in for the last 15 years, I'm just going to throw that away and go open up a restaurant or, or whatever. I go, why just reinvent the wheel? So, there was a different thought process after that, but no, really, I hadn't thought about what was next or what I would do. And it definitely wasn't looking at other cigar brands. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that question. It's funny because I honestly, the reason the predecessor to my question a second ago was I never thought. I mean, there's always never say never, never say always. But for my contention, like I never saw you going anywhere either, and I never even thought about you doing anything else until like literally the other day, being prior to July 1st, where Coop posed the question about like, hey, who would be a really good fit at company? And honestly, I can't even remember the company, but I was like, you know who I'd try to poach? You know who'd be really interesting? And it was just like it was an off the cuff hot take. And I was like, you know what? Jon Carney would be really fucking good in that position. And and I mean, let's be 100% honest here, John. Like you and I are good friends. And I mean, I'll be honest with our audience. I had no idea this was coming down the pipe. But I'll tell you, it wasn't until that moment and again, it was a simple podcast bit, and then it kind of went into the ether, so to speak. And then when the announcement came, I was like, it was shocking, but it wasn't at the same time because I was like, I had just put it, I didn't like speak it into existence necessarily in reality, but I spoke
Hey,
it
you
into
might have.
my existence. Well, maybe, but I spoke it into my existence and my like, so where I wasn't just like shocked, and um, but it for me, it was a sad day. I would love to say that it was bittersweet because I mean I always knew that you would do something something fantastic and great, and I knew that that wasn't the end, so to speak. But it was bittersweet for me because I mean this Florida Dominicana is the brand, is the reason why I'm here, and you've certainly our friendship has certainly cultivated that a lot as well, and so it was bittersweet it was sad for me. It wasn't bittersweet, and
Mhm.
but I was excited to see what the next chapter would be because I knew you were going to do something different. I knew you weren't going to go to another brand, and if it was, it just wasn't going to be the same, whether
Mhm.
it was or not. So this was an interesting direction. But before we get to Bentley Tobacco, I did want to talk because I wanted to talk about Shoulders of Giants because I thought this was an interesting side project that you picked up with your dad. Um, you know, 14 years of leadership, and then your dad also being a leader in the restaurant industry for so many years. This is a really cool project, and this spawned from newsletters that he started putting out after retirement. If I remember correct?
So my dad, so I grew up in the restaurant business with my family. My dad started in the restaurant business in 1972. He started a spot called the Snack Shack, which, if you've been following me around, the Snack Shack was reborn recently. And these concepts that I have on the side that were really the Shoulders of Giants became the item when I moved on. I was like, this is an opportunity for me to kind of control a dialogue, to see what I want to do next. As I mentioned before, um, on some other, other discussions on, I've only been on one show from here on, but nobody had my phone number. Okay. Because my phone number was
I
14
know.
years old and it was
I texted
LFD's
you.
phone number. Yeah. 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 And, and there's a lot of people that didn't hear from me for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because I had a new phone number and I did message some people. And in full disclosure, just to let people know that I'm being somewhat transparent here. I had the phone number about a month before I left. Okay. So I got a new phone and I'm like, just in case I decide to pull the trigger here, I got to be able to communicate, at least with my family. So I was like, I got to start looking at a phone. So nobody had my number, very few, very, very few people. And some people had my iMessage because that was on my private email. So there's some people that had iMessage and whatnot, but everybody had my social media. And it was really interesting because that first week, nobody could contact me. And the second week, really nobody could get a hold of me. And then, and then I also put out that the Shoulders of Giants thing that we're doing, and that was going to be what I was focusing on. And it really was. But ultimately, it was ultimately what its purpose was. was for me to have a little bit of a moment of clarity away from the cigar industry, give people a focus of hey, I was going on to something else, and I was, and that really did serve a purpose, but it's going to continue to serve a purpose too, as we keep that going. But what it really based around was my dad started this concept called Shoulders of Giants about 12 years ago. 10 years ago was when he started the newsletters. So if anybody that follows it and goes on it, you'll notice that we had our 10-year anniversary last month, and he retired, and he was kind of down in the dumps. He's a very healthy guy, but he has a little heart condition that stresses him, and he's in his mid 70s. And he was doing these newsletters, and it was really good stuff. And he was starting to get a lot of exposure because he was on the board of directors for the National Restaurant Association for nearly 20 years and actively involved in leadership. He built leadership and hospitality programs at a private college up in Maine called Hudson College. He did guest lectures. I would say if he wasn't from a small town of 2,500 people in Maine, that's where he was born and raised and where he's lived his entire life. He'd be retired somewhere on the beach, because that leadership stuff, the leadership guidance and mentorship is huge, and he's passionate about it. Way more passionate than I am on the educational side of it. I'm really driven by the executing side of it, and I try to execute as much as I can with it. And he's great at it too, but he really embraced the educational side of it for the last 35 years or 40 years. He really got into it. So he started doing this newsletter. So I was doing some projects on the back end where I was trying to learn some things for LFD to come to the future. Like I wanted to build a little Lito Gomez like animated chatbot. So if you go on my Shoulders of Giants site, there's a chatbot there. His name's Pillar. He was the first iteration of the chatbot that I was going to build for LFT. And that chatbot would answer questions like, where do I get Andalusian bulls? And he would tell you, oh, sorry, they're really hard to get, but here are our retail partners that have them, or may have them. Check here. Where are you from? And just different questions on the tobacco. You'd answer questions on cigars. So I practiced on Pillar, and I was like, oh, that's great. So it was a gift that I gave to my dad essentially for Christmas, where I was like, I'm going to build you a logo. I'm going to start learning some of these things in the back end in my hobbies, because it translates into my into my actual job in my career. And so I made some really cool stuff, and I got really good at it. And I started I started putting graphics on the newsletters, set it up as blog form. We set up email marketing campaigns in the back end and social media, and adding automations to all of those things. So I was like, this will be an interesting thing for me to focus on. Shoulders of Giants is the next step. At the same time, the Snack Shack was born, because the Snack Shack is the same. The Snack Shack pop up is at the distillery / that I did my bourbon Bull's Breath at. And I saw them doing pop-ups, and I'm just sitting there at my dad's house up home the second week of July. And I was like, wait a minute, like I could do a Snack Shack pop-up. And so I started making a logo. I started making a website. I brought Hacking Gourmet back, which is something big that we created during COVID to do premium cigar events and experiences around food, virtually first, and then in retail stores after. And we did about 100 of those events. So I revitalized Hacking Gourmet, threw the Snack Shack on it, and refaced everything. And my father-in-law has a catering license, and I'm food service certified with the National Restaurant Association in ServSafe. So I was like, let's do a pop-up restaurant on Sundays. So I did a few extra nights, but the goal was to do it on Sundays, and we're going to keep doing that going forward because it's fun. You were there with us. They have a cigar smoking tent, which is really fun. But Shoulders of Giants was my chance to change to control the dialogue, bring it focused on what I was going to be focusing on for the next couple of weeks and for the foreseeable future. But also knowing that when the concepts popped up, or an opportunity that popped up that aligned with my goals in regards to the premium cigars and how I was going to be involved in it, I could still do and have on the side. But for the most part, to be realistically honest, it was a cover, man, for me to figure out what I was doing next. And it was something I was good at. Like I was good at building the websites. I was good at graphic design. I was good at leadership. I had the pedigree for it. I had the experience. My dad has it. And we had a lot of fun things. It was cool to bring that together. And he got fired up about it. He was like, I love this entrepreneurial spirit. He's like, I'm scared. He's like, because you got to make money. He goes, but I love it.
Yeah, I just wanted to show everyone
And
I
yeah, yeah.
uh I had one of the Snack Shack burgers. Unbelievable. The picture does not do it justice. It was an incredible burger. Um,
I the cool thing about the burgers, yep, we had a it was awesome. So you had messaged me. I saw that you were flying in, and I'm like, "Are you in Orlando for business or pleasure?" And you're like, "Business." And so we went back and forth, and that's great that you got to come and have it. And the unique thing about the burgers is everything's locally sourced with it. And so the buns, I have a bakery locally called Old Hearth that does the buns for us. Um, the French fries are hand cut. The burger blend is from a farm in the area called Lake Meadow Naturals that does a blend for us of grass-fed beef, pork, and uncured bacon. The cheese is locally sourced. We use heirloom eggs, which are like the blue eggs. So we use those. And the kicker is everything is cooked in Wagyu beef tallow. So it's pretty over the top. It's really rich. It's delicious. And it's a culmination of all my culinary background put into one. And we're going to keep doing it because I said I do it on Sundays. I go to church in the morning after church. I'm all set up. I do my prep at the commercial kitchen prior to it over the week before sorry, the Friday before we prep everything. And I go over there and we hang out. And you saw it. My friends come over, hang out. We cook, we eat. We have customers and clients there that aren't my friends too that buy burgers, and we smoke cigars. There's a cigar tent. There's whiskey. There's bourbon. There's mixed drinks. There's bull's breath, and it really turned into a fun Sunday. And I said, why would I stop doing this? And it's something that I love doing. It keeps me passionate on the cooking side of it. I cook most of the meals here at home anyway, but I also do several dinner. I do dinner events around the country. I've done 2 dinner events at retail shops. Then I hadn't had a cigar brand at the time, and we did those, which was great. So yeah, we're going to keep doing the Snack Shack. We're going to keep doing Shoulders of Giants. But essentially, those were 2 items that were used as distractions and as a cover for what I was planning on doing and determining what was going to align with it. Because I hadn't talked to the Schuster family at that point in time at all. That came after that 2 weeks, and then but I did have concepts, I did have ideas, I did start putting down things of like what I would do. I did start considering what I would recommend to brands if they wanted to work with me in my consulting company, Shoulders of Giants. And so I started thinking about everything, and I was up late every night messing around. But those will definitely stay. Those aren't things that are going away. Shoulders of Giants is a representation of my father's lifetime work, how I fit into it and can carry it on. Same concept with the Snack Shack. He started in 1972, ran it for 35 years, and burned down in the early 2000s. And then I brought that back. So Shoulders of Giants celebrated 10 years last month, and then Snack Shack celebrated 52 years on the day that it opened.
wow.
Here in Florida. So it was really fun stuff. But businesses I could see working and going forth. But I love premium cigars. I have a passion for it. I think that it had a passion for me, and it still does. So I quickly determined that wait a minute, this is and honestly, in a real financial level, I mean, it just made sense. Like, I need to make money to support my family. I need to make money to live the lifestyle that we created, to pay my bills. And I the easiest thing to do with that on would be something that I have immediate knowledge and experience at a high level on, and it was premium cigars. So the only challenge I will say is I don't know how many people tried to reach out to me on my other phone. So I don't know if
There
was
might
there
have been a lot
somebody
of
else
job
that
offers
reached
you
out?
didn't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I have no clue, but I did have a lot of people eventually that reached out and on Facebook and friends, manufacturers, and then all it took was a few in the inner circle of friends to talk to my other close friends and be like, hey, I just gave this person your number because they reached out to me. I know it's not a problem. So that was good. So that spread around. And there were some people that just forgot because I was running around my head cut off.
You said a second ago though that all these side projects, well, they're going to continue. You use the word front while you could kind of figure things out. When July 2nd came around, did you know that at some point you were going to be back in the cigar industry, like one way, shape, or form? Like was there any doubt that like that wouldn't be a part of the Carney, DNA as it progressed?
I knew I was going to be back into it some way, and also I transitioned into something else relatively quickly on the back end of it that was not something I was involved in outside of my actual job as an executive at LFD. Um, but I'd worked closely since the NFT concept had released with the owners of the NFTs. The owners of the NFTs,
Hmm.
for those that aren't familiar with the concept, you can check it out. What LFD did with that, I think most people watching are probably familiar with it. But if you're not, LFD did a auction, and Tony developed this really beautiful concept with the golden Andalusian bull, where there's going to be seven auctions and there's going to be seven owners. So I was very close with all the people that bought it, because if somebody, I mean, there's almost $750,000 raised in that project, and people were spending over 100 grand practically on getting this. Their bids were between 80 to 100,000. But then after they had the right to buy these cigars in perpetuity. So, over a period of a year and a half that was out, almost 2 years, I worked closely with those owners, and they were like, what should we do? How do we sell these things? They're super limited. And, so I said to them, what you ought to do is start an appointed merchant program. I go, you have an opportunity to have something nobody else gets. There were six individual owners at first, because one of them bought, Alexander Martinez bought number one and two. And Don Patel at Cigars on the Avenue had bought the very last one. But over that period of time, it shrunk a little bit because Don bought two. So now he owns six and seven. Alex owned one and four, and Don invested a serious amount of money in starting an appointed merchant program. And I worked with them, as that was part of my job, to promote the brand and promote their investment. If you spent $750,000 with somebody on a on a unique project and it being digital art, with even though there was real life value to it with the cigar side, it was a venture that was scary, so they needed to have somebody to support with them. So I provided a lot of support, and shortly after leaving, that first week, as I said, I spent tons of time talking to people about, even before they bought the NFTs, what they were, how you could, different options of what they could potentially do. And so I shortly after that, it was probably the third. It was before the 4th of July, because I took the 4th of July off to shoot off fireworks, and go nuts with it. But the purveyors and the owners had reached out to me and said, do you want to help us? And I said, yeah, sure. Why not? I don't have a non-compete. I don't have a contract. I don't have anything. I'm technically a free agent, and I'm starting my own businesses, but I'd love to get involved in what you're doing. So I started meddling around with the website, started meddling around more with their social media, other than just a advisory role as the VP of LFD. And we started rocking and rolling with that, and added Golden Purveyors.
Hmm.
And then in the meantime, I started looking at, wait a minute, this could be an outlet for my return into the premium cigar industry. And so essentially what I built was a three-phase project. The first phase of that project, internally, was to rebrand, uh, and create a new brand called The Purveyors. So that the Purveyors became essentially an agency of working with those NFT holders to help them out and give them direction, and then drop the word "the golden" off it to make it more focused on me. And it became the Golden Purveyors became a subset of who I worked with. And on that website, there's some things that people can see if you go on it now, that are going to be part of some announcements at the end of September. But the Purveyors was what I built in my head, and I'm like, this will be whatever's next, whether it's my own brand, my own cigars, or just working with brands that already exist. The people that own the Tatuaje NFTs
That's what I was
had
going to
reached out
ask.
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, they reached out to me and asked, and I have been helping them. I'm not as intimately involved as I was in that project, so my knowledge of it was very, very different. And I think they're two very different concepts. That may be something on the table. I'm leaning towards no at this point in time, but I will help them regardless. Whether it becomes part of the purveyor concept or not is TBD. But yeah, I was working with these people, so it made sense.
It's going to be
And
an entire new frontier
yeah.
though, man. And you guys, I mean, you guys
Mhm.
were, well, I we tend to forget just because they were the it's interesting the first people to break the trail usually are either always remembered or seemingly forgotten sometimes. And with respect, I feel like United was like a little too, they were too early to the NFT concept, but they were the first, and they did, I thought they did a good job for what was this unknown, right? And y'all took that concept and and really, I mean, really turned it into something that, for a while, and for the most part, still, John, I'm still relatively confused on it, but I mean, it's regardless, is it works really well and has worked really well, and and then Pete Johnson does it with Tatsuahe, and that's kind of it. But this is going to be the new frontier a lot. There, I mean, the Purveyors has a chance to be the kind of the trendsetter of it.
So,
And
so the Golden is obviously a really high end product, and those owners that I work with on that, it's a you don't sell a $200 cigar just like that. It's got to be in the right places, the right environment. You don't sell Ferraris at a Toyota dealership and vice versa. Doesn't degrade either of those. It's just a different lane that that product's in. Pete's program was less of Pete's program and more of Abe's. Abe owns Anarchy, that brand, and then United Cigars with the Adelaide Black Ritos was the first real NFT execution. I think Drew Estate had done something with NFTs prior, but it wasn't cigar related.
correct, yeah.
Um, it wasn't a specific cigar. I think it was like some artwork stuff and just artwork.
And United
And
was
the
actually a non-tangible NFT as well. Like it was the
Yes, yeah, and it's funny that that we talked about, because Tony and I were guest speakers with the people from Eureka at an NFT conference that went on for 2 or 3 years in Miami, and obviously it's dead now because 99% of the NFTs that had zero tangible goods that were probably used for money laundering or drugs and whatever, um, those are dead. But it was funny. I was talking there, and Timbaland, the music artist, I joke around. He spoke right before, so I got up and I said, "I want to thank Timbaland for opening up for us today." And the room emptied out because the guy forgot to tell that there was another thing coming. And but I had a big conversation, and my point there was, this technology is used for authentication, and Ethereum had just made some adjustments to their blockchain, and they became an authentication company. And I said the future of this is real world tangible goods that are attached to this, and luxury is the first step. In the future, it's probably already slightly being used, but this similar technology is going to be used for, titles on cars, uh, deeds on houses, you name it, tickets,
yeah.
anything. It's being used, and it's a huge, huge program. But it grew out of these, this digital art thing, and there was this company there called, like, you know purple headed monkey or some crazy thing like that. And I'm like, I go, you guys aren't going to like to hear this. I go, but I tell you, 99% of these, I said the number too. I'm like, 99% of these people aren't going to be here next year. And none of them were because the conference didn't exist anymore. It just changed. And those people
Mhm.
pivoted. The ones that did pivot good, and the ones that were in there made a lot of money off it. But it really changed. And, there just wasn't, it didn't seem to be that there was a lot of real world use to owning a digital picture if something wasn't attached to it. So yeah, it was huge. Whether that was access to celebrities or business people that and physical access to them, that was huge too. But the tangible goods on a luxury good was excellent, and it was a really great concept, and it's still a really great concept. And it takes time to grow something; you don't grow it overnight. So it's been, I tell the guys to hold extreme patience, The same thing I tell the people that own the Anarchy one. I'm like, you need to have extreme patience as you build this and give it time and treat it right at the same time. So yeah, there was some involvement with that, consulting with them, and then I started building what what I was going to do and how it was going to look, and I started jumping around trying to find some investors for some concepts that I had. I built a I built a concept of a three-phase launch of projects, and I'm still using that three-phase concept, and we're in phase one right now. It just so happens that Bentley came along shortly after, out of nowhere, and I'd had a relationship with the Schusters for 15 years because they used to distribute LFD back, I think 6 or 7 years ago, and Martin Schuster had reached out and said, "I have a concept, not a concept." We have a brand. And I said, okay, let's talk. And I go, I've smoked this before because I was in Europe about a month and a half prior in May, end of May. And I walked in and I saw a cigar that said Bentley on it. I'm like, oh, that looks cool. I'll grab it. So I grabbed a Bentley half Corona, which isn't available in the US yet, and smoked it. I was like, oh, this is really good. This is cool. I knew nothing about it. I looked it up. It's all over Europe on the websites and things over there. And I never thought anything about it until Martin Schuster and Mark Heitman, who is their sales director over in Germany, reached out and we started talking. And through everything they talked, first thing I asked was, "Are you part of the car company?" And they're like, "No." And I'll explain a little more of the story later. And I said, "Well, your branding and everything's great." I go, "Send me some cigars and we'll talk next week." And I smoked the cigars. I said, "Where are they from?" And they said, "Hoyt, Nicaragua." And I said, "Phenomenal." I go, "The oldest Nicaraguan cigar factory. It happens to be one of the hottest ones out there for the last
Right.
10 years, too." And so I was like, "That's great." So I don't have to have any questions about that. I go, I smoked it. The price points were in a good spot, not too low, not too high, but a kind of a sweet spot in between, uh, right below super luxury and above, above the $8-9 range, which I think is seen as is the beginning of value. And so they had a lot of focus on it, and I liked it. And I was like, this could be a perfect start for phase one of my concept. And the most important part about phase one is the projects that are part of phase one are part of all of the phases. So it's the front mark for what's going on. So I got to take a deep breath once we decided we were going to work together. And it's an important distinction. I promised myself I wasn't going to work for anybody again, as I didn't want to limit my skill set or limit my decision making, or limit the creativity aspect by being beholden to a decision being
Back
made
to
by
your
someone that owns the
entrepreneurial
company.
spirit, right? Back to the
Yeah,
entrepreneurial
yeah.
spirit.
I had it. I had it again. I woke up to it, and it just aligned. So it was a really good situation, and at the same time, um, it didn't interfere with my consulting stuff because that's private. And if somebody wants my services, we have that. And the Shows of Giants, it didn't interfere with my snack shack because of that. But it really allowed me to execute phase one of my plan.
So what is the role at Bentley Cigars? Like how is it different than the role at La Flor Dominicana? Are you not going to be building a sales force? Are you in charge of a different aspect of the business? Are you part owner? No, I'm just unloading questions here, John. I apologize.
So Bentley Tobacco is a company based out of Germany. The history of the company goes all the way back to the 1870s. And
Pipe
I'll
tobacco,
get into that
right?
in a second.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, no, they were there was a pipe maker in Switzerland. It was founded by two brothers, and it wasn't called Bentley at the time. And they made like pipes, walking sticks, and all of that. And fast forward over the period of time in the 1970s, a company. A lot of these are German names, and I haven't. The story I'm good at, but I haven't. I can't say the names, so I just don't say them. But a company acquired the pipe business and essentially the whole business in 1970, and Bentley Pipes was born. And they brought on this guy. His name was Hans, and it was called a former. So like what a former is like is an expert, like it's like a master blender, right? So he's like the expert on a master pipe maker. And he was with them. He was a young guy at the time, but he was with them for a long time. And Bentley pipes were born from that. So that's where the name Bentley started, essentially. And in the early 2000s, they came to the Schuster family, um, August Schuster Company, and the Schuster family had been in the tobacco business for over a century too. And they started doing pipe tobacco line with them. They were into tobacco business, so they distributed cigars. They made cigarillos. They made for periods of times they made cigarettes. They're not in that now, especially not with the Bentley brand. And they just had the expertise and the outlets to make those things, so they made Bentley pipelines of tobaccos. And then fast forward again into the early 2000s, it kind of transitioned a little bit more, 2005 to 10ish, and they Martin Schuster, who's now the CEO of the Schuster brands, started building the Bentley brand out as a more luxury premium cigar brand. Because the Bentley pipes are very high end. The Bentley pipe tobacco is very well recognized and has a great reputation. But the name Bentley comes from the 70s, and the company went back, it was originally originated from a brand of pipes that started in 1870. I think it was 76. So it was funny. I had somebody the other day, they posted online. I don't read a ton of comments, but I'm always paying attention. I never get too worked up. But somebody's like, good luck selling a $14 cigar from a company I've never heard of before. And I replied politely, but I was like, thank you for the support. I appreciate the kind words and support and good luck. But the company's been around since this was founded from 1870. So if what happened in 1870 didn't happen, this wouldn't be here today. And going back to 1970s where the Bentley stuff came in, and then the Bentley pipes, and then it was just natural progression with the family to create to create premium cigars, and they did a great job at it. They did about 99.9% of everything right. The packaging is very solid. The bands are impeccable. They did a lot of things they're very good for premium cigars. They were simple. It's color based, green and white. The price points were very simple, round numbers where they're not confusing, in a great price range. They ranged from $13 to $17, $16. But the big one is that's really challenging, and I tell people this, and they don't tend to listen, which is fine, and I'm glad they don't. But it's called Bentley. It's a really easy word to say. It's one word. It's easy. It's kind of regal. People associate it with luxury because of the pipes. And there are brands called, there's another brand called Bentley. Yeah, and we have nothing to do with that, and the story has nothing to do with that. There are some close things where there's some words, there's some words, there's some fonts, there's trademarks, colors, and things like that we have and that we are allowed to use. And we did communicate with Bentley, and the Schusters did that, and they communicated with us. That was one of the third questions I asked. I was like, all right, is it the car company? And they're like, no. And I'm like, it's really close. And they said, not as close as you would think, but the areas that it is close has been communicated with Bentley, and they worked together to ensure there were no concerns with that. And so the only thing they didn't have here was they created this great setup, and they just didn't have anybody to light the fire. And I said that one part of it, that 1% or that 0.1%, is a really hard spot to find somebody that's got the skill set and the experience of traveling, being around, and the understanding of what's coming from the cigar market, and what the modern cigar market here in the U.S. needs. It's really hard to find somebody that's done that for a period of time.
Right.
And they ran into me, and I've been doing it for 15 years, and I'm only 40 years old and still in my prime. And you sit there, and I was like, I can light this match easy. And I'm not saying the job is going to be easy, but I know I can light the fire, and we can get a lot of attention, and then we can start telling the story, start letting people get involved, and consumers and retailers get involved in the experience, and really have really present the Bentley concept to them. And it's a great story. I mean, it's a family that's been in the business over a century. It's a brand that wouldn't exist if it didn't start with that company in 1870. So you really got a great story to tell. It comes out of a great factory. Price point's very good, very competitive, especially with cigars coming out of that factory. And just need to get it in the right people's hands. And I was really, really happy with the exposure and the support that came out from the announcement just on Friday. It was huge. It was overwhelming. It wasn't planned to go down this way. It wasn't. It was planned to be a press release on Friday and leave it at that. I wasn't planning on doing a media tour, but my friends at Cigar Dojo and ELOsoFumar had reached out and asked if I wanted to be part of a show without knowing I had anything going on, and I said, "Yeah, I would." And I go, "You know what? I got something coming out on Friday, and I think it might be interesting." And even before I said yes, I thought a lot before, and I was like, do I want to start this fire with straight gas? And I was like, you know what? This is a new brand here in the United States, but the brand has already been tested and it has the resources in the background. The bags that your cigars came in, it takes cigar companies in the United States 5 to 10 years to come up with packaging like that. And because they took 5 to 10 years to get packaging like that. So I was like, you know what? Let's pour some gas on the fire and light this baby up and see where it goes and get to work and hit the ground running.
Well, I have some more questions about Bentley, but we're going to take a break real quick and do one of our fun segments here. Because yeah, there are a few questions that I have about Bentley, but before we kind of get into that, a couple of these segments here, John, I'm wrapping up the Bentley White Corona that you had me light up first, and man, this is exquisite. This is absolutely fantastic. I can see why when you gravitated towards it so much, and even though you haven't been smoking a lot of Connecticut's over the last 15 years, this is sensational. It's got plenty of body, got incredible flavor. The construction was remarkable. The retrohale was incredibly aromatic, and there's a lot of complexity to this cigar. I really, really enjoyed it. So this is exciting. I can't wait to light up another original as well. And then as we kind of progress through the rest of the show here. But let's take a break and with one of our fun segments, which is always the presidential trivia segment, which is brought to you by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Havana, distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, the Firecracker, and the highly acclaimed Atabey, Byron, and now Alfonso lines from Selected Tobacco. Smoke one today and start living united. As John takes a quick break, we'll just want to thank United Cigars for bringing this featured segment to ELOsoFumarTakes. We try to take a fun break and kind of throw a little bit of a wrench into our shows by introducing some presidential trivia. It's something that I've always been fond of. And so the background for today's question, I always try to curtail it to my guest, is surrounding Teddy Roosevelt, who is the founder of the Bull Moose Party. And the reason I chose this and why I think it is applicable to John is, forever we've associated John with La Flor Dominicana, and forever Teddy Roosevelt was associated with the Republican Party until he wasn't anymore. So that's why I came up with tonight's question being featured around the Bull Moose Party and Teddy Roosevelt. So tonight's question, John, is, as leader of the Bull Moose Party, Teddy Roosevelt was famous for doing what? A, being the only third-party candidate to secure more of the popular vote than one of the major party candidates in an election. B, failure to remerge with the Republican Party and in 1916. C, despite the most ardent supporter of the Sherman Antitrust Act, opposed the U.S. versus U.S. Steel lawsuit. D, openly alienated by Southern progressives known as the Lily White Movement by dining with black supporters on the eve of the 1912 GOP convention. Or E, all of the above.
Wow. Because I have no clue. I'm going with E, all of the above. He had to have, right? All of those things, to do all those things.
He did all of those things. Absolutely.
Thank God. Thank you for throwing E in there. When
Yeah.
you said E, I'm like, he's not going to add a fifth one here. I'm like, boy, this has got to be. I'm like, please, no.
This is what's really interesting, as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was trying to really do, and what third party candidates have been trying to do since 1912, is secure enough of the popular vote to gain more federal funding and everything. But he was the last one. He's the only third party candidate to ever achieve a majority popular vote over one of the other major candidates. And yeah, he had 27% of the popular vote in 1912 compared to his GOP counterpart, William Howard Taft, who had
Wouldn't it be
23.
interesting to see? I'm sure there's history on this, but wouldn't you love to research, and you may have, the amount of crazy political crap that went on behind the scenes after he secured that much of the vote? What type of things did they do, both parties, to make sure that nobody ever got that number ever again?
Yeah,
Because
I
that's
mean,
a really big 27% is is a really big number. If we had a three-party system, a legitimate three-party system, 27 to 30% might win the election if they didn't
exactly.
have anything where you had to get a
It would
majority,
have.
right?
It would have. So Woodrow Wilson secured 41% of the popular vote, won the election. If you add 27 and 23, you have the win. And this country takes a drastically different turn than it was supposed to. It was it was about as drastic of a turn in terms of historical context, going all the way back to when Lincoln won, because the Democratic Party at the time was in shambles, because you had the Southern Democrats and the Northern Democrats. You had anti-slavery and and you had abolitionists, straddling the party lines of the Democratic Party, which split that one party up to like ridiculousness. And then here comes this little known former congressman from Illinois named Abraham Lincoln, and history is redefined as we know it. What I think is really also interesting too is that he, like you said, the what this is probably the single biggest calamity that a political party has made, and the only comparison that I can make, and it's not even close, right? Is the decision for in 2012 for John McCain to add Sarah Palin to the ticket. That single decision completely changes the course of that election. John McCain, I'm thoroughly convinced John McCain wins that election if he picks anybody else as a vice presidential candidate.
I agree with you 100%. It was, I don't necessarily dislike Sarah
2008,
Palin,
excuse
but
me.
but they didn't read the temperature in the room and at all, or they misread the temperature in the room. I mean, that was not a good situation, and it really did change it, because you had McCain that was, represented and branded, rightfully so, a war hero, and you know,
And very
a
moderate too. Yeah.
stalwart, yeah, and a
Yeah.
stalwart in the Republican Party in a really more moderate sense. And this isn't about opinions. We could talk political debate another time in a different show, but I mean, that's what he was and who he
Yeah.
was that was his character, and yeah, I mean, I remember when he picked her, and I was like, what are they thinking? And the political environment was slightly different at that time. Um, you're coming off some really interesting, um, you had a two-term president,
Mhm.
conservative two-term president. So you were going to have conservative, 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 probably conservative again, and then instead you have the introduction of Barack Obama, and all of that stuff. It gets born from that. Because he was big in the Democratic Party at the time, and I was actually I when I was in college, I was a bellman and valet at the Contemporary Resort at Disney World, which is where Richard Nixon gave the "I'm not a crook" speech. And the reason they did that there is because they hosted the Florida Democratic National Committee conferences, and the Republican ones back to back. So we had that a few years, and the one year we had George W. Bush was the guest speaker at the Florida, and he flew over. It was the same year, so Air Force One flies over for the show. He lands, he's there, he speaks, and then the very 2 weeks later, we had the Democratic National Committee, and it was that election, and I believe it was that election, and he had no, it was after that. Sorry, it was because Obama was the one that beat McCain, correct?
Yeah. Obama in 2008 beat John
So it was
McCain
the one before.
in
It was
04.
the second. Yeah, it was the
Bush and
second
Kerry.
term. Yeah, so it was the second term for he. So Obama was the guest speaker in
Yes,
2000 and
four. Yeah, that
2004.
yeah, that's where he was. That was where his fame was born. Yeah. Hmm.
It was huge, man. And they got done. I remember I'm valet parking cars, man. And we're parking Bentleys, we're parking Rolls Royces, you name it. We driving all sorts of stuff around. There was a stark comparison. That's a great story for another day. But the two different parties were very different. But everyone at the DNC was like, that guy's going to be president. That guy's going to be president. That guy's going to be president. And it was really interesting to watch it. And he did become it. And
Yeah.
that was a big part of it. But yeah, there has been a thing. But as I said, I'd love to see what happened in the back end of that and internally to never allow that to ever happen again because we haven't seen anything like it. And
No.
that calamity that we're talking about with Palin was like self-destruction. I mean, Roosevelt left and then caused all of it. He was like, "Hey,
Yeah.
I'm bigger than what you are," and he knew that he could do
And he
that.
was. Yeah, and he was. That was the
Hmm.
craziest thing. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And yeah, it's just insane. It was an insane time in American politics. And wait,
I
yeah,
mean,
when
I
you
guess you could say it where we're at right now. If Trump decided to leave the Republican Party, which he wouldn't do because it would guarantee he wouldn't win, but he would take he'd take a large, huge, massive percentage of the vote.
oh,
He'd probably be
1000%.
30. He'd probably be 35%, close to 40, but then he'd lose 60-40 and then lose the electoral college. But he would probably take an even larger percentage. But it's
Yeah.
political suicide now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's honestly, I think that's probably why they're honestly why the Republicans, even if there are Republicans who, and there are documented Republicans who are opposed to his nomination, won't fully go against it because that's political suicide to your point. So yeah, some interesting
Yeah, it's the
stuff.
money machine.
Yeah, interesting stuff. So well
Hey,
that
I got to yeah, I got
yeah,
one. No, no, no. Sorry, not interrupt it, but
oh,
I
it's
think
all
I
good.
say this every time I'm on the show because it's still true. John Tyler, the 10th president of the United States,
Hmm.
his grandson is still alive.
Still alive. Yeah.
Yeah, he was president in like 1841
Hmm.
to like 1845, and his grandson is 95 years old and still
Yeah.
alive today, which is uh,
Yeah.
which is pretty interesting.
Never met his youngest child. Never met his youngest child. Fathered him in his 70s. That child grew up and fathered a child in his 70s, and that child is still alive today. So
Yeah,
yeah,
Harrison Tyler.
yeah, it's crazy. It is absolutely insane. Yeah, we actually just discussed that on Coop show, on the primetime special edition, my show I do with Coop, and it's a scary fact. It's one of those facts that are like that, too insane to be true, but really are kind of things. And yeah,
Hmm.
um, but yeah, no, it's this is I this is a fun time for, I've lauded myself as an observer and enthusiast for American politics and American history. And from that perspective, this is one of the more fascinating times in American history. This polarizing dynamic that we find ourselves in. And it's funny how history repeats itself. There's in a lot of ways. You can't really compare Teddy Roosevelt to Donald Trump, but in ways you can, because they're disruptors. They were disruptors to the traditional party system. But like you said, the money machine, so he can't depart from it. But um that being said, so that leads us to our next segment, which we're bringing back. I'm going to be starting to bring this. Before, we were doing this consistently every week. I'm going to try to bring this back as much as possible because it's very important to me. And um, you know, for a while, I was every week we were asking our guests to spotlight or highlight a nonprofit or charity of their choosing. And so I'm pleased to kind of resurrect this a little bit and bring this back. On the heels of my father's memorial service, which is having next month, which is we're having in lieu of flowers and stuff, we're asking for proceeds to K9s for Warriors, a charity I've long supported. But you wanted to talk a little bit about the Latif MS Foundation, which I grabbed a quote from the website that this was really cool. This is a really nice mission. I feel we are making a difference in people living with multiple sclerosis and help make daily life routines and challenges just a little easier. And that was David Latif, who's the founder of it. But Carney, why is this foundation special to you, and why did you choose to highlight it tonight?
So I had a few retailers that had reached out to me over after my departure, And one of them was a retailer in Pennsylvania. It's called Smoke Rings Cigar Bar and Cigar Box in Pennsylvania. Michael Barletta, and he's been a really good personal friend of mine, but a massive supporter of every effort that I've ever made in premium cigars. And he had reached out to me and said, "Hey, man, we usually do a dinner every year. And you cook because they have one of his business partners owns a catering company, which makes it very easy for me to cook out of state." And he said, "Let's do one this summer." And I said, "Yeah, let's do it." And he goes, I know you don't have a brand or anything, but I said, "It's funny." I go, "I don't have a brand." I go, "But it's been relatively well known that, pardon me, that Evan Darnell of the Red Meat Lovers Club, the founder, and I have a very good relationship, and there's a lot of personal things that align with us through food, the love of red meat and cigars, and doing cigar related dinners. Now, mine tend to be very focused cigar dinners at cigar retail outlets, and Evan's side of it happens to be, the Red Meat Lovers Club started as a hosting charity events and becoming a outlet to produce epic events surrounding red meat and bringing good causes together. And cigars became a part of it. And then his partnership with Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust in making the Red Meat Lovers Club cigars. So I talked to Evan and I said, "You know what, Evan, I got this. I don't have a brand, first of all, so I don't have a cigar brand. And I'm going to go do a cigar event." And I said, "Do you have interest in doing a Red Meat Lovers Club event together where I'll be the culinary side and you be the Red Meat Lovers Club side?" I go, "And this account carries the Red Meat Lovers Club cigars, and they've wanted to do it, and I've had success with them over the years doing events." I go, "I think they would be a great opportunity for it," because it couldn't fail because I'd already done dinner events there and knew that it worked. So all we had to do was add in the charity concept, add in the Red Meat Lovers Club cigars, and he was fortunate that we sold a ton of Dunbarton that night. It was great. I personally, really have a lot of respect for Steve and his insight into different things. And we've gone back and forth on things over the years on social media and whatnot. Mainly when I made fun of the brulee when it first came out, which is still one of my favorite Connecticut's. And we had a lot of good banter with that. And I got a unicorn out of it, so that was cool. But no, Steve, I always had a lot of respect for him and Dave Lafferty. And I said, we got a relationship with them personally. I go, I have no issue, uh, building a Red Meat Lovers Club event with you. So I called up Mike and I said, with Evan, I said, "Do you want to do a Red Meat Lovers Club?" He's like, "Oh my God, I'd love to." He's like, "That'd be great." He's like, "Let's get it done." He's like, "I got a perfect charity for it." He goes, "It's a friend of mine, David Latoff, and he has MS, and he started this foundation." And I said, "That's perfect." And I'd met David before, and I didn't realize he had the foundation. He was just somebody I'd met around when I've done the dinner events with cigars, and he's in that area of PA around Allentown. And I said, "Let's do it." So we did the Red Meat Lovers Club event. That was our highlighted charity that we raised money for that evening, and we had a big success. We had several $1,000s. Everybody got to enjoy Red Meat Lovers Club cigars. We had the special Red Meat Lovers Club Evan Darnell special event cigars there as well, and so they really got a fun time. We had about 50 people. And I was when you mentioned that to me and I about the charity aspect, I said, "You know what?" David at the end of the event gave me a big hug. He's like, "This was great." He's like, "Thank you so much." He goes, "This was so unique. The menu was epic, and he goes, the cigars were great." And "We'd love to do it again sometime." But he's like, "I just wanted to say thank you." So when you mentioned tonight, I was like, "You know what?" I go, let's do a little shout out to that, the Red Meat Lovers Club and what they're doing, and to David and his foundation, so the Latoff MS Foundation, and what he's done and really embraced that as he developed that at a young age, and he was an athlete and he embraced it and really has lived it to help a lot of people out, including himself, but mainly the people that he's helped. Has been living in a way that allows you to maximize your enjoyment of life, and they've done a lot of great things for people with MS, and I think it's something that's recently very important to me, and had a big impact on me in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, so I'm gonna put this obviously in the show notes too, but you can also I'm gonna be putting the link in the chat as well. If you feel called to donate to the cause, I strongly suggest that you do. I mean, MS is one of those debilitating diseases that unfortunately, does not have a cure, and it's crippling, and you know, there's a lot of diseases out there and a lot of debilitating diseases out there that exist and that have no known cure. And MS is one of those that I think there's still a lot of mystery around. A lot of people don't really understand it. A lot of people confuse it with Parkinson's, and other things. And this is a great website. I was able to peruse it before our show tonight, and there's a really great educational piece to this. You can learn a lot about the disease. And if you feel called, I strongly urge you to donate. Every little bit helps, as always, to every charity, which is great. And it's just one of those things that I think is a great organization. So thanks for bringing it to our attention, John. I really do appreciate it. So as we kind of curve back into talking about Bentley Tobacco and this phase one of the Carney return, I'll just go ahead and deem it that. So I think one of the biggest questions that I have now, when people think of European-based cigar companies, Davidoff is always top of mind, and they're probably the most successful. But honestly, if you think about historically speaking, they're probably also the outlier, being the exception to the rule. Because Cavalier of Geneva, you could probably say, but Sebastian has spent a lot of time in the States. He was living in Texas for a while, and that's probably honestly what probably led to a lot of the early success of Cavalier Geneva. But there have been other brands that are European based, Maya Selva, Patoro, and others that just that are great cigar companies made by great people, great foundations, and just haven't been able to really get legs and get moving in this country. What's going to be different about Bentley Tobacco, and how are you going to make it to where it's joining the exception and not the rule that we've seen the last 15, 20 years for European-based cigar companies?
Well, one of the things is there's a lot of great people, and there was a gentleman that posted something online thanking Coop. I saw yesterday, and it was interesting timing. Because I can't remember the name of the brand. You might know it. It was it's a family's last name. What was his name? Anyway, he posted. It wasn't a European company, but it's a brand that they're masters of tobacco. They've been behind the scenes in a lot of projects. The gentleman who was the founder of Asylum with Tom Lazuka is a part of the organization too. And he posted something of like, he said a salesman or a person transferring to another company gets a ton of attention, but this doesn't when there's the people behind the scenes. And there's a couple of things that are challenging not with that, which I think it relates to what happens with these European brands coming over here, either creating a new brand or whatnot. One problem is just in general with brands in general. There's a lot of people behind the scenes that people just don't tell stories about. That was the first time that when I read that gentleman's post, that I had heard of those people. And when I heard about him, I read into it. I read his posts, and I read the story that Coop had posted. And I was like, these people need the story told. And maybe they try to tell the story, but maybe it doesn't get executed right. I don't know. But there's a lot of names and behind the scenes that you hear stories about. And as those get out, you got to find a way to tell that story and get that in front of people. Because what tends to happen...
Brand was Domain, by the way.
Yes, Domain, and they're very good. And they're putting a lot of effort into it. And I think they're going to be successful if they haven't already. And obviously, the behind the scenes people have been successful with a lot of things. But how do you connect to the consumer? And if it's because of marketing or advertising or creating cigar celebrities and things like that, that becomes a barrier to entry, right? So a lot of people worked with these people, but the person who maybe they made cigars for became a bigger part and a bigger face. I would even venture to say, Hoy de Nicaragua is the oldest Nicaraguan cigar factory, and they've become massive because of other relationships that they had, with Drew Estate, Steve Saka, Nick Malio, and those have built those things up, and they've embraced those stories because those people started telling big stories. Nick Perdomo's got a gentleman who's like 100 years old that's been involved in the tobacco business, who's like a legend down there. And Nick does a good job talking about it, and when the people go down, they get to hear about it. But I think if that gentleman had gone to it, went somewhere else, I don't know if you hear their name, or they get overshadowed.
Yeah.
But I think the big thing with European companies coming over here is they're big, they have money, and I think they believe they understand the American cigar market, because they make good cigars. They go to the right factories. There's other cigars coming out of those factories doing very, very well that have less money behind them, on a worldwide scale. So I think that's one of the first concerns is what's the story that you're telling, and when I say story, I don't mean, I'm not fiction. I mean, this is nonfiction stories. How do you tell that story, and how does it become an attention? When Balmoral came out, they were working with Drew Estate, and that went very well because of their exposure and their ability to put things on shelves. And the sale of that company definitely derailed that. But I don't know how that was doing prior to that, other than the initial
Yeah, it got
exposure.
pulled completely. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it didn't even get a shot. It was like the lights were on and then the lights were off, and um, when they sold, it was done. It was just a goodbye. Um, so it was goodbye for people that distribute cigars with them too, because I mean, LFD at the time was distributing with Agio at the time. So in Europe. So interesting enough, I think that's one reason. And then another big thing is the the industry as a whole. And if you follow me on social media shortly after, you follow these timelines, when I started figuring things out with Bentley was going to be what we were doing, I was like, one thing that I need is innovation in this business, not just innovation in brands, because this is a very traditional business. So, like, what are you going to do? You're going to go and find rare 10-year-old tobacco that just
Yeah.
all of a sudden existed that nobody else saw. Um, you know, so no, I don't think that stuff's realistic. But you got to listen to what the consumers are saying. So what I decided to do is, like, I'm going to be real provocative. I'm gonna go and look like vindictive. I'm gonna look like I think the industry sucks, and I'm gonna ask a bunch of questions to get people to have visceral responses to see really how they feel about it. Now, I had a list of things that I felt that I wanted to focus on, but I also wanted to see what everybody thought about it. So the only way to get people to respond is to be, let me go out and be angry. And there was some realistic to it. I think there are things that are broken and could be fixed, but there's also a lot of things that go well and do well in this business, even though we're behind on a lot of things, simply because it is a traditional business. But you got to listen to what the options are. I've had people mention, even to this day, like barcodes in every cigar. There's still brands that don't have barcodes.
Yeah.
Um, that's something that happened at Bentley. Like 2/3 of our brand has barcodes, and then we talked internally, and I said, this was last week. I'm like, we need barcodes on everything, like ASAP. So that was one thing. So we got to have barcodes. You can't not have that. That's a barrier to selling a product, because if you make it more challenging for the retailer, if I have to scan this and the scan doesn't work, or if I can't scan it and I got to do extra work, if we can make it easier for you by doing something very simple as of adding a barcode label to it, investing the money in that, once you put it over of scale, it ends up being cents that costs to do that. So it's very simple, right? And people don't think it because the upfront cost. I don't know why it doesn't happen, and it's still kind of unique. But I think for the most part,
Tradition,
the
like you said.
vast majority, yeah, but yeah, the vast majority of it. I think it breaks down to a money aspect of registering SKUs, printing them, having them put on, and then how do you do it? But there's really easy and simple ways to do it, and there's companies that do a great job at it, and there's ways to get it done. But I wanted to sit and hear about challenges they had. Another one is, I hear from the media that it's hard to get on email lists. So if you look on the Bentley website, you go down to the bottom. If you want to join the email list, you can join as a consumer, retailer, um, or media, or other. I don't know what other would be. I think if you join as other, you might not get a lot of emails from me, but but I was like, well, how easy is that just to go on there and and the website hosting is not violently expensive because I know how to build a website and the technology side of the background. So it's like, let's get that done. So that was easy. We did that. Um, and that was from, people commenting. Yeah, and I thought that, but I didn't know how intense people were about it. And then when I started looking at it, and learning. And I'm like, wow, that was really not that difficult to do because I knew what I was doing. If you don't know how to do it, it becomes a little more difficult. And I'll tell you, the big thing is there's always somebody selling you a really difficult solution because difficult's expensive and they can make more money. Um, the next thing was, a retailer portal where you can go online and get images and logos. I'm watching a very close friend of mine building a website right now over the last 6 months for a retailer in Tampa area, and he's having the hardest time getting product pictures. And I'm like, why is this a thing? Like, why can't they get a vector logo? Why don't they? Why are there not immediate access to these types of things? So I was like, Bentley, we have 185 gigabytes of professionally taken photography. We have pictures of the boxes from every different angle with the same shadows. We have cigars taken. I was like, why wouldn't we just give access to everybody that's a retailer to have that, or media that may need it? So you can log in, join the web portal. It's not, you're not automatic join. We have to approve that just to make sure that the right people are joining it. So we added that. And another one was online ordering. Why can't they go online and look at a price list and plug in an order if they want? Again, it blew my mind how easy it was for that to be executed. And I've had people pitch me on really complicated solutions, and I started to try to find solutions on my own. And I was like, wait a minute, it's not that complicated. And so we have an online portal for that. So we added a lot of innovation that was there, and we added a lot of technology on the back end that was real basic. These are basic issues that people have that had basic solutions, and we got a lot of feedback from that. And I listened to everybody. I got involved in comments, reading what people had, and people were joking around that I'm crowdsourcing. Yeah, it was exactly what I was doing. Why wouldn't I ask? I sit there and people are joking around about crowdsourcing, and a lot of them was as compliments and just chiding. But it was like, yeah, why wouldn't you go and ask the consumers what they dislike about being a consumer? Why wouldn't you go and ask the retailers about the challenges they have with a retailer? As being a retailer, dealing with consumers and dealing with manufacturing or brand partners. I go, why wouldn't you listen to that and ask? Because it's that simple. We live in a time where everybody gives an opinion about everything. It's really was really wild to me that people don't, either one, weren't asking, or two, not listening. And if you're going to ask, you should listen. So we talked internally, and I said, with Martin and the team, I was like, this is the things we're going to do. And they, our agreement was, I'm running the show over here, and this is what we're going to do, and this is what's going to work. And uniquely, we started Bentley Tobacco USA. So we'd have a USA company, which we do have. We have a US company now, and I run the whole show with that. There is no title right now, that's just because it's starting at zero. So you pick a title, I'm it. I'm everything except CEO because that already exists.
Do you have an ownership stake in it, John? I had asked this earlier, and I know I threw a lot at you at the time, but
my financial involvement, I won't get involved in that. Right now, we have a moving goalpost. So when somebody answers a question that way, most likely the answer is no. So that's probably my answer. No, I don't have an ownership stake in it, but we have a moving goalpost as we start this going. They had introduced this briefly into the United States last year through their shipping partnership, and there were some retailers that brought this in, but there was no support on the back end, and there was no company to support it. It was kind of just, let's try it and see what people might think about it. And so we took some of that information, made some adjustments, and took the information from the social media stuff and things that I had written down if I were going to do this. As I said, I'd already started on a 3-phase project. And so we added that. Another one, retailer map. Still to this day, there's a lot of brands that just list their retailers on there. It costs like $10 a month to have a really high-end map that you can put logos on and unlimited locations. And I'll tell you, I'm not going to tell people too much, because if they want those things, they can call me up at Shoulders of Giants and pay me to help them with it. So if you want it, it's easy. Reach out to me, I'll help you. But it does come with a cost. I promise you it's fair. But so no, we implemented a lot of those things. So that was one step, and that's why we took about a month. I've been working with them for over a month now, and we took a month. Like, well, when we do this, we got to have all these things set up. So if someone's interested, they can go fill this information out. If someone's a retailer, they can log in and have the retailer portal, and they can instantly be using everything that we have to make their lives more efficient and working with Bentley be more efficient. And then the second aspect to your question is what makes this different is this is this is a brand that has been established. It's over a century worth of story and history that led up to where it got to in the last 10, 15 years. There isn't just one facing coming out. There's green and white. It's very simple. It's easy to discern. People like that. I've talked about colors a lot too, and there's been shows. I think on Kiss My Ash yesterday, they talked about colors with Dan Thompson at McAuliffe, and they have red, the black. I think they should keep doing that type of concept as they expand. But this had two very distinct lines that were very connected to the brand. The green and the white is very connected to the brand. So there's the Bentley green and the Bentley white. White represents the Connecticut. The green represents the Habano, and that was simple. That was easy to identify. That's easy to identify as a consumer. The name is really easy to pronounce. It's Bentley. You don't have to speak another language. You don't have to do. All you have to do is know English and Bentley. And the name Bentley has some panache around it. It's an elegant name. It is an elegant name. People name their kids that, and it's an elegant name for kids. There's a car company that uses the name Bentley, and it's some of the most elegant vehicles in the world. Breitling uses the words Bentley with Bentley, the car. So it's an elegant name, and it's easy to pronounce. It doesn't have Spanish in it, which is not negative. I don't think that's a bad thing, but it is something that's easy for people to say. And the last part of it for me is the third part of it for me is the branding itself is excellent. The cigars look elegant. They show up well. You can see that it looks nice on the screen here. The foil on it pops in a cigar shop if they have LED lighting, and it's very easy to tell what it is. Okay, it's Bentley white, and it's 4 sizes in the Habano and 4 sizes in the Connecticut. And the last aspect of it is it comes out of a really great factory. Jorge de Nicaragua makes phenomenal cigars. They have a great relationship with them. They've had it for decades, and when they started making the premium cigars, that was a really great aspect. There's not a hard. It allows it to be very transparent, and I think that's one of the big things that we want to do. There's be transparent in the process. What are the blends? What's the pricing? It's transparent that the story we're going to be telling is very transparent with a lot of history in it. We're going to be honest with the retailers. We're not trying to grow too fast. It's going to be very purposeful how we grow. We're not looking for major online retail outlets to sell as much as possible. If that happens in the long-term future, if it becomes a very massive brand here, some of that may potentially change depending on how the industry changes in the next decade. But that's really not in the cards. It's a matter of focus on the brick and mortar heavy retailers. If you don't have a brick and mortar store, this is not going to be a product for you. Will it be available online? Yes, but it'll be available at a fair price where everybody can compete, and everybody's working on the same structure. And we're really partnering with the retailers to provide a partnership. If you have 2,000 accounts, your relationship for the most part, other than maybe if you do an event with a principal or you go to the trade show and see a principal, is really the sales transaction with the sales manager or sales rep. And that's a good relationship. You build it over the years, but it's a sales transaction. We're not shy about that. There will be sales transactions, but our sales transaction is consumer and retailer driven. And the decisions that the manufacturing and brand side of it is made is to make those decisions easier for you, make it easier to do business with Bentley because you know what's going on. And then as we expand the line, there's multiple facings that are still available in the green and white that are in Europe. There's 5-packs that are really beautifully done. That'll be the next step in the process, and our retailers that we're going to be working with are going to be aware of that. So it's a natural growth progression, and we're not putting too much out there, but we're not putting too little either. So it's a real brand. There's eight facings. The stores will have the eight facings. It looks beautiful on the shelf and it'll represent itself. And as we expand, it'll be based off of our ability to expand, but our ability to expand with the retailers that are supporting with us, so we don't leave anybody behind in that process and forget about them. And as it grows, if we get to 150, 200 accounts, we'll look at uh, expanding it to um, beyond what I'm doing right now, and potentially look at an additional salesperson, or an additional body and presence that has some experience in the industry as well, to grow from that. And then once we go from there, reassess where we're at, and in the same process, not overgrowing is going to allow us, not over expanding and over scaling is going to allow us to scale with our existing partners. So I don't want a lot of back orders. I've been in a company that because of the supply and demand and how that worked over a period of 30 years, sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. That's not a negative on them. It's just the brand had a lot of exposure, and there was times where that expansion was, once you have someone, if you have a huge supply, if you have a huge demand and a controlled supply, and you're in too many retail outlets, you can't service them all. And I don't want that to be that way with Bentley. I'd rather be in 200 accounts and service them all incredibly well and grow with them and gradually add, a small percentage each year, than to go from, 0 to 1,000. And then how do we supply it to everybody? And then, by the way, once you go to 1,000, you're like, you may have 300 like, well, this didn't work, because you're so tied up working with, a large group, and you're spread too thin. Yeah, so you really, the mentality behind this is to grow as we can, and as we do grow, and we expand with team members, to provide that same type of service, so there's not a gap. So really, it's based off of taking what retailers want and what consumers want. And then at the end of the day, it breaks down, the cigars are good. So you do all those things right, the cigars are good. We have experience-based programs we do. It's efficient to deal with our website and efficient to deal with us as a supplier for you. I mean, we're truly a partner in what you need, and what you need is efficiency. You need to be able to work with us easy. It needs to be, information needs to be accessible, and you need to know what we're doing. We don't need to hide something, and keep it a secret and then have some big announcement on it, because we want you to be part of it. And before we take the next step, our retailers are going to know what that next step is, and they're going to be a part of that. So it's a really interesting opportunity, and I think that's why it's going to be very different than people have seen. And ultimately, I say this humbly, but I mean, I worked my ass off for 15 years, man. I know what I'm doing. I work really hard, and I cook dinners for people. I cook dinners for their consumers. Some of the best experiences people have had, I think, in cigars, that have been real humble experiences for me. It's nothing more humble than breaking bread and having a cigar and being vulnerable and taking your passions and letting them see it. I've busted my ass for 15 years, and there's a lot of people that work hard in this business. I think I worked hard. I think I worked innovative, and I think I listened really well, even when people didn't think I was. Now that I'm on my own, I'm going to be listening even more, and I'm going to try to bring a little bit of everything together in one place and make it very focused. And I think we've got something that's got some serious legs here.
That's awesome. You mentioned the number a couple of times, Jon, the 150, 200 retailers. Is that an arbitrary number, or is that a number that from being able to, obviously being on the inside now with Bentley, that they have the infrastructure and the wherewithal to be able to supply that number of retailers comfortably?
So, since I spoke about transparency, I'm not going to tell you guys in this. No, I'm kidding. My goal here in the next, my goal in September is to introduce this brand into 30 to 40 retailers. Okay. It'll be a combination of retailers that have expressed interest to us of the brand, whether it's through the announcement or social media. And it'll be a combination of that, and then retailers that I think are a great start for the concept that we have in terms of the purposeful growth. Because the reality on the background is we're towards the last quarter of the year. We probably have one more chance for an order of product to be made to get to the U.S. before the end of the year and to set us up for the beginning of the year. So that 30 to 40 is going to give us an idea of the current inventory that we have, how that spreads out, and then we're going to probably need to make that other order just to give a heads up. And these factories closed during December for several weeks, so you're really kind of up against it until February, until you start to see any other product. If you get things going, and the trade show being in March is a challenge in itself. So I see my goal this month is 30 to 40 retailers. Let's see where that goes. I want to be able to service people if they get reorders. I could open up to more because I already have some interest above that number, significantly above that number. But again, I'm going to be transparent and say this is where we're going. We're going to see you. I see you. I want to be part of what you're doing. We want to work with you, but we also want to do it when we're able to supply it right. And our goal is to be able to scale that. Fortunately, our manufacturing partner has the ability to scale and has the ability to scale very consistently, which is nice. And they said there's a long-term relationship there, and they're great people. So I see that 30 to 40, that first, this first month, see where that's at. I would like to, if all goes well and we're able to supply the way we are, launch it in about 75 or so before the end of the year. And then I would like to have a really big focus at the PCA show in March and see what that next step is. And that will give us an idea of what we'll need to do for the next year in regards to ordering throughout 2025 and supplying on our end, and then setting ourselves up for a real positive spot and our retailers up for a really good position to be in 2026. So I think the next 18 months is a really big gauge in it, and we're not going to go over the top. I would be very shocked if we got to a point where there was more than 150 to 200 retailers by the end of next year, just simply because going above that creates a lot of challenges in regards to forecasting what you're going to do. Sure. So I think we could really comfortably forecast at about 150 retailers and get some sort of an idea over that 18 months, and then maybe expand past that. But I said it's a purposeful approach, and we don't in the process want to leave anybody behind. So if you bring the cigars in, we're going to do everything we can with you, and our retail partners have to, we're expecting them to step up in the same time with us, but they're not going to be doing it alone. And so at LFD, from my experience, I use that as a reference. The sales managers had relatively large territories. My largest territory when I was with them, they had like 260 accounts. That's a lot. It's a little too much to handle for one person. So I know that 150 is a reasonable amount. I know that's doable with the efficiencies that we've put in on the back end and the availability of communication and the straightforward nature of the brand. It's going to lend itself to being a comfortable number with a one person show over here. Obviously, we have the support of the Schusters and the German aspect of it. So that we're fully supported on that end, which makes it good too. So there's just a lot of the right pieces in the right place. And I said we're going to be transparent. We're going to be honest. And so when we grow, it's going to make sense. And I just don't see, if we stick to our guns and we stick with our retailers' guns and the consumers' guns, I just don't see how that wouldn't translate and make sense. As I said, at the end of the day, the cigars are good. It may not be in your flavor profile, but they are really high quality products. We take a lot of time and effort into that, and there's been a lot of thought that's gone into it and the brand in general. So I really think it's going to be received well, and I think we're going to have some success. Will there be times where it doesn't work somewhere? Yeah, most likely, but we'll identify from it, learn with it, and work with that retailer, and hopefully churn an area that maybe it doesn't do as well as someone expected. Maybe if we work together on it, I think we can make that as successful as possible.
It's awesome. So you'll be there at the PCA trade show, and you'll be and I don't want to put words in your mouth here, John, but you'll be visiting retailers nationwide yourself as well.
I will be visiting retailers. Sorry. got tobacco in my mouth. Um, I've been chewing on this cigar for whatever reason. Now it's in my teeth. Um, yes, I will be visiting retail outlets. I'm gonna be working directly with the retailers. I will not be traveling like I did every single week, just simply because there's not that much exposure. So we're starting at zero. But I've already done 2 trips. I have a trip planned next week, a trip planned after that, and to meet with the retail outlets. And there will be some, there's a good amount of retailers that are supportive of this so far without seeing me, and I will be seeing them as well. Um, but I said we're starting at zero here, so we got to see what happens and see where it goes, and yeah, but I will be my biggest my biggest tool, in my opinion, has been my ability to be out and be with people and be with the consumers, connect with them. I'm a big person, so I've got a big personality and just a big presence, and I do enjoy sitting and being with the retailers, being with the consumers, and I think that's a big part of this. And will it be a thing where everyone sees me every month? No, but our retail partners will see me throughout the year. We will be working with them, and we'll be doing initiatives together to be working with that. And as we need to expand, I have plans for how we would do that internally as well. So we will, for now, it will be me. And even when we do expand, it's always going to be that type of exposure. That's another thing that cigar, I think some of these companies have missed is they they come in, they've got the cigars out there, they have distribution partners, they get them on the shelves, and the reps sell them, and then there's no connection because there's so many other things in a portfolio, or it's part of a portfolio that's overcrowded. My portfolio, for lack of a better term, is I'm not a broker, but my portfolio is the front mark of that portfolio is Bentley. The representation of me as the purveyors in the United States and in the cigar market around the world, hopefully, is Bentley is my front mark, and they're my partners are is Bentley and the Schusters in Europe and Germany, and we grow that as we can, and I can't do that without me being out there, and I think it's also just the right thing to do.
Wonderful. Well, Jon, I really appreciate you coming on tonight. We've got a series of more questions to conclude our show tonight, but this has been really exciting. This obviously was a lot different than what I had in mind when I first approached you for the show. But like you said, this was all something new. I had no idea this was coming down the pike as well. And so this is fantastic. And I'm obviously I'm obviously a fan of yours. Smoke the White, fan of that cigar, and I had the opportunity to smoke the Ecuadorian Rosado as well, Habano, with you last week, and this is a great start to what I just know will be an amazing beginning for you, and I'm just wanted to congratulate you on 14 years with the Florida Mendocana, and this is certainly not the end. It's just the beginning of the next chapter, and I'm really excited to see where the next chapter in the next era of Jon Carney goes. This is really exciting. So thanks for telling us a lot about the story, a lot about the beginnings, and we'll stay tuned on everything as it comes and everything. So we'll get on with the rest of our show, the series of more our what I call our fun segments. So this is our newest segment, which is we've done a couple of iterations of this, but this is our new sponsor segment, which is brought to you by Artista Cigars, which is truly the last hidden gem of the Dominican Republic. With nearly 70 years of rolling cigars, the family behind Artista believes in honoring their long-held traditions of handmade artistry. Artista's blends include factory-exclusive tobaccos and front marks for every budget. In fact, Artista Cigars has one of the most varied portfolios on the market today. There's something for everyone at Artista. Now, if you're like me and never can decide, Artista Cigars is a breath of fresh air, actually, because I can take something from any box of Artista, and I know I am getting something truly special. So this segment is a rapid fire. Jon, I know you kind of did one similar on your last show, but this is a little bit different. So I call it this or that. So basically, I give you a choice between two things, and you tell me which one you pick. So, so some are cigar related, some are sports related, some have nothing to do with either. Of course, you threw in some food ones as well. So let's start with sports. Patriots or Red Sox?
Oof. Uh, Patriots. Patriots. I'm a Boston sports fan, as you know. I love the Red Sox. I'm just more of a football fan than a baseball fan. The If you're going to give me a hat to wear, though, if you ask me what hat to wear, I would wear a Red Sox hat before the Patriots. So
Really?
I don't
Okay.
think you're asking an apparel. In apparel, I would pick Patriots. I would pick Patriots hat after I pick the Red Sox hat. I just think
Okay.
the B is cool and the Patriots hats and stuff and apparel. So, but if I'm picking one, I'm watching football game before I'm watching baseball.
We're gonna come back to sports because I wanted to ask that because you do have a really cool. I as an aficionado of hats, I have a varied collection as well. Um, but um, but I know you do as well. So, but I know you also go hatless too. So, do you prefer to wear a hat or do you prefer to go hatless?
I love wearing a hat. I do. I really really do. I like wearing backwards hats like you do. I like wearing trucker hats with the flat brim. That's my go-to now because I don't wear them as backwards as much as I used to, but I prefer flat brim trucker hats. And my favorite ones right now, I've got a it's probably been for the last several years. I used to wear a lot of flat brimmed American flag hats,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know why I got away from it. I think it was because I just wore the hats so much better and they just got crummy, and I retire them. But the crown jewel of my hat collection, which is going to sound funny because I wear a lot of red, white, and blue stuff, is my Canadian hat. I have a not the Montreal Canadiens. I have a red Canadian flag hat with the maple leaf on it, and it's got the Canadian national anthem on the brim, and it's got the little
Oh, that's
beaver
cool. I've seen the hat.
with
I
the
didn't know that.
hockey sticks. Yeah,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's a really cool hat. So I'd say that's kind of like the crown jewel. I bring that out probably once a month, and I wear it, and people are like, "Why are you wearing that? What's up with that?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm from Northern Maine. My family's Irish and French Canadian." I was like, I grew an hour south of New Brunswick. I go, so Canada, and I got a lot of friends up in Canada too. So that's like the crown jewel of it. But the one I've been wearing the most lately, besides my vast collection of political hats, is Celtics. I've been wearing Celtics hats a lot lately because we
Yeah.
got that championship. We got the chip. So I have two or three really nice Celtics hats that I've been uh wearing lately.
I was gonna wear my Celtics hat tonight, but I had the my no crying in baseball shirt on, so I thought I'd just throw on my one of my Red Sox hats. So um so back to sports though. You mentioned Boston area sports fans, but you're also a fan of a collegiate team. So I wanted to give you the chance to say Celtics or Alabama.
Ooh, I've been a Celtics fan my whole life. Basketball is my favorite sport, and it's my favorite sport to talk about. It's my favorite sport to watch. It's the one I'm most educated on. Um, if you ask, like, if you what sport would you coach? I I would coach basketball because I think I could do it. Like I think I could actually deal with it a little bit. Like at least I understand it. Then the concepts are easier. Like I love football, but man, coaching football now is crazy. It's just so in depth and it's
Oh
so
God, yeah.
so many intricacies to it. And baseball and being a manager, there's a lot of strategy and it's different. But if it comes, I mean, yeah, Roll Tide. I love Alabama, and I've been a Bama fan most of my life too. But yeah, I'm Celtics first. So the Celtics are my favorite sports team, and it's the one that I'm the most worked up about on a regular basis. And
Mhm.
I love the Patriots. Obviously, that was great because of the run of my life with Brady. So that changed the dynamic a little bit. But I, I watched I watched like two Patriots games last year because I couldn't stomach it. But no matter what, I missed like three Celtics games and that was it. So
Every
Celtics
time
over Alabama.
every time you say that, it always blows me away, John, because not only your knowledge, but your in depth encyclopedic knowledge of football is one that I've always been impressed with. But so the fact that you tell me about your love for basketball every time, it still kind of shocks me. But
I
um,
I was in Indiana in Indianapolis one year during the National Rifle Association convention there, and I went with the Cigar Rights of America. So it was when Glenn Luke was with them, and we did some cigars. It was me, Tom Lazuka, and Glenn, and we did an event. at this place called Mickey Blaine's for like their top NRA members and members. And there's people that are like $10 million lifetime, um, you know, supporters, and they had these gold jackets. So the night before, we were in Nicky Blaine's, hanging out. It was me and Glenn, and this guy sits down next to us. He's like, "Hey, do you mind if I sit here?" I was like, "No problem." And I'm like, "Dude, you're Matt Doherty," and he's like, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, I am." He goes, "Who are you?" I go, "I'm Jon Carney, whatever." And I'm like, "What are you doing in town?" He goes, "Well, I work with the Pacers and whatnot." And Doherty played with Jordan. And so
Right.
we're sitting there talking and we're watching a basketball game and we're like, we hit it off. So we're smoking cigars, we're talking, we exchanged emails and talked for a little bit after that. And so we're sitting there, and Glenn recognized him too. And there was a couple other people with us, and he's like, "Oh, nice to meet you." And he's like, "Yeah." He talked a little basketball, and then Matt and I talked for like 2 straight hours about the game, what was going on, and we got done. And Glenn's like, at the next day, he's like, "I had no idea." He's like, "You were that passionate about basketball, you know, that much about it." He's like, "I was." He goes, "We were all sitting there talking." He goes, "And then just the two of you chatted for 2 hours." And about basketball. Yeah, I said, yeah, it was fascinating. We had a great time. We had some people mutual people that I had known from some prep schools up in Maine that he had known, and I didn't play at a prep school, but I played against the prep team there, and went to summer camp up in that area every year for like 10 years in basketball. So we had a couple people that he had known and that were like, you know, quiet legends in the business. Like what we were talking about cigars, people that are behind the scenes, they never even knew, you know, people don't know about, but once you know about them, you know. The
Right.
people that are in the know them. But the, you know, the vast majority of people don't identify it. So it was really, really fun. So that was kind of a cool thing. But yeah, basketball is my thing. If you want to get me going, put me in front of anyone that wants to talk basketball, and I will go for forever.
Okay. All right. Maine or Florida?
Mm, that's a brutal one. That's a brutal one. I always take the easy road out on this one. Maine in the summer, Florida in the winter.
All right.
It
Fair
is
enough.
gross down here, man. I got a little rag here. When we go off the screen and I'm not talking, I wipe my face off because it's like 75% humidity out here still, even at night. And yeah, but there's no way to answer that question. I guess if I had to take one, if I didn't have to work and I could just be retired and I was wealthy, I'd probably pick Maine just because the slogan is the way life should be. It's very patient and very calm. And
Yes.
I would say like I would live there year round, but I definitely would get the heck out on vacation. That's why I said if I was wealthy, I would pick Maine as my primary residence for sure.
Yes. All right. A burger or a steak sandwich?
100% burger. I'm strangely not a big steak sandwich fan. I think steak should not be served on bread. And if it should be served on bread because it's a lower grade of beef, it shouldn't be consumed. I think you should consume the highest grade of beef that you could possibly afford at any given moment. And anything above choice should not be on a steak sandwich. Should not be on bread. And a hot take here: beef Wellington violently overrated.
I agree. I absolutely agree. So I don't know how hot take that is, or maybe we'll just be outliers. And yeah, I think it's 100% overrated. 100%. I'm with you. 1,000% on that. All right. French fries or onion rings?
Um, French fries, man. French fries is my favorite food. I have no self control with French fries, so I'm going to take French fries. I do have a secret family onion ring recipe that we sell at the Snack Shack as a special item, and that my dad's had for over 50 years. So I do love onion rings. Onion rings help pay for my college, but I prefer French fries. I really love French fries, and recently I've been using Wagyu beef tallow, and I'll tell you, man, the fries you ate were delicious,
Oh
and
yeah.
those were special. So yeah, I go French fries for sure.
Next level. Next level. All right. So, will your funeral be traditional or new age?
I'm not dying. Ah, Man, it'll be traditional. It'll absolutely be traditional. I think it'll be traditional. Now, it all depends when I die. Um, if I were, this is very morbid, but if I were to die like right now, it would be violently traditional. The longer my wife is Hispanic, and the longer that we stay, the longer that we stay in that lane, her family's younger than mine. So they may be in charge of my funeral if I make this, if I make this life a lot longer. And if they're in charge of the funeral, I think there might be like tattoo artists and stuff there. I don't know what they might do. They got a combination of everything, man. They're Puerto Rican,
Oh,
Dominican, Cuban.
oh man.
She's got some Irish. It's wild, bro. Lebanese. Their Dominican side's Lebanese. So, bro, it's a if I said the longer I get into that lane, the more new age I think it could be. You never know.
That's
But
funny.
if it were to be today, I think it would be real sad and really traditional. Um, but yeah, so yeah, I think we're headed towards more of a new age on that as I become more and more Latin.
Well, many years from now, when that does happen, either new age or traditional, whatever it is, what three words do you want people to remember you as?
Right now, I'm going to tell you, I want him to be the three words are driven by taste.
Fair enough. Always marketing, John. Nice. Love it. Love it.
Uh,
Well, that was our news segment by Artista Cigars. It's a breath of fresh air because, like, if you can't find something for to smoke, it's always good to have Artista on the standby because anything they have to offer, you know that any you can pick anything from any box and you know you're smoking something special. So, all right, the next segment is we're gonna keep going with the food theme here. It's Everybody Eats, sponsored by Pastania Cigars. If you always make sure that your servant's towel is bigger than your appetite, everybody will always get theirs. Pastania Cigars is more than just great cigars made by cool people. They embody an attitude of gratitude and grit. With Pastania, everybody eats. So, John, I know this was a very hotly internally hotly debated time for me to determine which question from this segment to ask you. But um, what is the best experience you've had eating with other people?
I just had this conversation on Thursday. I was with Tony Bellotto up in Ohio, and man, this was probably like 10 or 11 years ago. And a good friend of mine who worked for me at the time, Andy Yaffe, who's been in the cigar industry now for about 10 years as well.
Yeah.
He and I went to college together, and he worked with me at LFD for 6 years. So he and I went to Bazaar Meat in Las Vegas, and I know people that are part of the cigar industry are very familiar with Bazaar Meat. And Andy and I went one day, and we went to the trade show early on just personally, and I said, let's split a hotel room, let's hang out and have like a great day. And he's like, all right. So we had this day called the best day ever. And we went, if you looked online, we rented a yellow Ferrari and went out to the Hoover Dam. We drove through McDonald's for lunch in the Ferrari. That evening, we went out and did a zombie apocalypse experience with Christian Aroa and some of his team and his family.
That's
And
funny.
my buddy Reagan Starner from R&R was with us. And that was cool. And then we came back and we were all sweaty and gross. And we went out and had a our first dinner ever. They let us in like shorts and stuff, which was great. So he and I had this incredible dinner at Bazaar Meat. So fast forward the next year, I sat down and I was like, I want to have a dinner with people who I had a really good relationship with, and I don't remember every single person that was at the table by name, but it was people that had played a really important role in my success at that period of time, on a personal level with the business, and then on a professional level where they just supported me and we had some good times together. So we sat down and I booked a dinner for like 24 people. And when we showed up, we had wine bottles already waiting for us. We had like magnums of this Justin Isosceles. Anyway, we had this just crazy no holds barred dinner. And I won't get into what it was, But even to this day, like 10 years later, everyone, if I ever run into anybody that was at that dinner, we're like, that was like one of the best experiences you could ever have. And there's crazy restaurants that you can go to, and some really nice places that I've been to, and some great experiences. Like I went to this nice private dinner. It was a 25-course meal with Lito and his family once by Jose Andres called A in Las Vegas too, which was really nice. And that was incredible. Don't get me wrong. But that was a top 10 experience. But that dinner with those 25 people, there wasn't one person there that wasn't that didn't enhance the dinner, didn't enhance the experience. And at that time in my life, that hadn't had a major impact in what I was doing. So that was one. And Tony was there and his family, and we were talking about that last Thursday. And when he brought it up, he said, "Remember the?" And I go, "I know where you're going." I go, "The dinner at Bizarre Meat," and I started smiling, and he smiled, and that was a really special time. And there was a lot of unique things that happened that evening, and a lot of good friendship things. So that was probably my best experience with people, and especially being a large group. Especially for a non-private, a non like family meal, like that was one of the best meals I've ever had with a group of people.
Yeah, I think you had a second reiteration of that dinner a couple years after that, John. That
We
that
did.
was one that I was invited to, and that
Mhm.
that's that forever will be the answer to my question. That will
Yeah,
be my answer
that
to
was
this
special
question.
too.
That was really
Yeah, we
special
took
for me.
we took a limo. We had cigars. Remember the cricket that was in the restaurant? We had a cricket
Yeah.
that was there the whole time, and we
Yes.
we thought it was like ambience of the restaurant. And I was like, man, I go, that cricket sound effect you guys have is kind of loud and annoying. And the guy's like, no, it's an actual cricket. We can't find it. And I was like, well, that would explain it. And yeah, no, we had a really that was a really great experience too. And then we went and had we smoked Andalusian Bulls after
Smoked
that, and
Andalusian Bulls, yeah.
at the Hard Rock Casino. Yeah, the Hard Rock Casino, Hard Rock Hotel there. It was yeah, it was that was a special one too. Um, and yeah, same type of environment, same type of concept, and at that point in time, those are people that had a big impact. So it's I guess you can take from that is like the cigar industry has a lot of people that have a lot of impact on people's lives, and I
Mhm.
hope I've had that. And I think the reception of what's going on in the last few days, in the last 2 months has been real evident of that. And you whenever you make a change in anything, you really get to see who one your friends are, and two who people are really actually supporting what you're doing. And it's been overwhelming for me to have that, and it makes those experiences even better for me now, looking back at them and realizing that those were parts of what built what I'm what we're all doing together now.
1,000%. Right. This next segment is brought to you by Asylum Cigars. You mentioned Tom a couple of times tonight, John. Refuge is more than just a physical place; it could be a state of mind. Some of life's greatest reflections can be found in our own personal asylum. Moments like these were made for Asylum Cigars. So light up an asylum and choose your refuge. So, John, I think you've taken part in this segment before, but I'll just remind you. So this and um, segment is sometimes, again, you've spent the better part of 15 years smoking with people. This is a community driven industry, and we're sharing a cigar tonight, even though it's virtual. And but every so often we have the moment where it's that moment of solitude where we're smoking a cigar. And I'm reminded every time I talk to you, John, I'm reminded of the the night of my son's birth, where I lit up a double hero 700. That was a box that was given to me. And then at that point, it had been aged 5 years, and it's something that I'll always remember. And I still have pieces of that box that I'll remember, and I will smoke with various milestones in my life. Um, so every so often we have those moments of solitude. They could be moments of celebration, like I described, or just something else. I'm sure you've had several of these in your lifetime, but what's one that comes to mind? And if you can remember, what were you smoking, and what was that moment about?
So on a more regular basis recently, we got a pretty big backyard here, which is nice, and it's an old house that was built in like the 1950s. So we're slowly adding things onto it and improving and making things to make it like a refuge for us. So a friend of mine just gave me this small, like 8 foot long and like 2.5 foot deep, like wading pool above ground. It has a filter and everything in it. And recently, in the last month, I've been at the end of the night or even during the day. I go out and grab a cigar and I sit in the little waiting pool. My daughter plays in it too. She has a blast because it's a great size for her, but it's big enough for adults. And but it's a sitting pool. So I've been sitting in that recently, and I'm going to do it after the show tonight and just cool off and bring my body temperature down and get ready for bed. So that's what I've been doing recently. Um, but the the most recent one that there's tons that have impacts, man. It's so hard to dial it down to one, and it's great that you pick a occasion like that because it makes it easier uh, to appreciate things. Like I have some cigars made that were made for my daughter when she was born for autumn. Lito and Tony were very nice to make me a special pink cigar with Autumn's name on it. So I enjoyed a lot of those when she was born. I probably enjoyed too many because I only have like 10 or 12 left. And so those were really fun. And I do enjoy those. I smoke them. I smoke some. I used to smoke them. I smoked one on every one of her birthdays. She's only had 2 birthdays so far. But I smoked one when she was born. I smoked one on her first and second birthday. I'll probably back off on it now because I have very few left, and I want to have those for when she graduates from high school and college, gets married, and something special like that. But I'll say the most recent one that I had was um, after I moved on from LFD, I I lit up one of the Goldens. Okay, and if you looked on my Facebook, you can find the moment that was the official moment, not Facebook, but on Instagram. And I posted a picture of me smoking a bowl, and it was called. I labeled it. The caption just said "Fin," which means final done. And that was really reflective for me. And I know it's a really high end cigar, but that's not what was reflective about it. It was kind of like the culmination of the 14 and a half years of what I'd done in the premium cigar business. When I got started in the business, I was in a challenging spot of figuring out what was next. And then when I left the business, I was in a challenging spot of figuring out what was next. And it was that same type of experience. And I don't remember what I smoked when I first started with LFD. But I do know that it was in the double Hero line. I think it was the Churchill Especial, and I had that cigar, and I was like reflecting on what was going to be coming up next and where I'd been and what I was doing. And it was the same type of experience I had then, where instead of I was reflecting on where I'd been specifically with a special cigar that represented a lot of what we did together there, and then what the next step was going to be, and at the same time enjoying something on a celebratory level. I guess there's a lot of people that say congratulations on your next venture. When you transition from something, there's a lot of positives. You're obviously doing it to make hopefully make things better for yourself and continue to be successful. But there was a lot of successes that I had, so that was kind of for me a fitting moment to sit and embrace it. And I smoked right down the street here at Cigars on the Avenue, and there was a few close friends with me. And I walked in, we lit it up, and we had a nice reminiscent couple hours over what had gone down for 14 and a half years and what we accomplished, and then what was next to come.
Good. Well, next, the last question of tonight, and John, I can't thank you again enough. As you mentioned your family earlier, I know that Sunday nights are always family time, and for you to take time out of your evening and spend it with me was incredibly special, and I really do appreciate it. So thank you so much. So tonight's last question is always our curveball segment, which is brought to you by Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. Fastballs or curveballs, it doesn't matter since the company's inception. Steve Sock has been knocking them out of the park. 8 consecutive years in the consensus, actually 9 consecutive years in the consensus top 3. Congratulations to our good friend, Steve Saka. So my last question here, John, has to be, if you had never gotten into the cigar industry, you'd spent time with Darden or maybe other restaurant groups or whatever, and you'd found a place for, a career there, 14, 15 years, do you think you would have learned the same leadership skills that you learned in the cigar industry? And if so, or if not, how do you think that would have been different?
It's hard to tell what you wouldn't have learned, obviously, because you don't live it. But I think I would have taken a lot of the same. I think I would have acquired a lot of the same leadership skills. Now, how you execute it, I think, would be significantly different, and how that would have looked in the execution, I don't know. But I was equipped with who I was and how you absorb things one way or the other. So I think I would have absorbed similar things. It obviously would have been in a different field and executed differently. The one thing I will say is, had I continued down that path, the you know I worked with Walt Disney Company for 3.5 years. My longest job, other than LFD, was the Walt Disney Company. I worked for them for 3.5 years. Continuing with them, who knows what I would have done? I was a bellman and valet at the time. It was great money. It was a really fun job. Who knows where that could have gone? With Darden, there was a big, large corporate structure, and there's a lot of education, training, um, and in a massive industry in the restaurant industry. So the sky's the limit with that, I believe. And I think I would have been around because I was around a lot of these people with my dad. Anyway, after that, but I will say the unique thing that the cigar business has done for me in the industry, one specifically LFD, just the dynamic of how the company was built, the dynamic of Lido, how the business was broken down in ownership. It was husband and wife that owned it, 50-50. Not because they were married. That's how the business was structured. So that created a unique dynamic, dealing with family members that came into the business over the years with Tony and then Junior. Those personal relationships that I still have with them. Junior's like a brother to me. I've known him since he was like 8. Tony's one of my closer friends. And then the other relationships in the business is people from all different walks of life. I always called the industry like the land of misfit toys, and each of those misfit toys had something to give and something to get. And I think the relationship and the ability to have really open discussions and really internal discussions, like how people's mindsets work, on what they're doing, the grind they're on, because this business is a grind. Um, Even for the people that are very successful, because it's just the mentality of like, we got to keep scratching. Even though we're successful, we got to keep scratching, right? So I think it definitely delivered a different way to analyze uh, leadership, analyze growth, analyze yourself, see how you fit into something, um, and the closeness of the industry, even with your competitors, is really interesting too, because you have a lot of conversations that in other industries you just wouldn't have. If you work for a big law firm and you're meeting with the other law firm, you're having a conversation. You're talking some things, but I mean, you have really personal discussions in this business with people, and I think getting to see how people think, and then watching how they act in their decisions, there's a lot to learn and educate from that. And it's also a business that people get to explain their passions a lot, and it's explained, the passions either for cigars, life, politics, religion, sports. You get a lot more openness. So I think if you are willing to be even just partially a sponge, I think this industry had a bigger impact on what I'm doing and what I would be doing, and certainly has a bigger impact on my mental health and my mental focus on it. Where I really have identified who I am, what I'm good at, uh, my limitations and how to use limitations, and make them aspects of success as well. And I hope that continues to go forward. And I think the culmination of this is we're about to see, right? We're about to see if it paid off. Uh,
For
so
sure.
we'll see. But I really do think that no, the experiences I had here would not have been matched in any type of corporate or large environment. Um, it would have been not matched in entrepreneurial sides. I'm working with entrepreneurs, daily, is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You're working with entrepreneurs, so you get to learn. You get to learn from everybody, good, bad, mediocre, the best at what they do. People who are successful despite challenges they may have, which is leadership in itself. So yeah, no, it's been invaluable, and that's why I said it would have been remiss for me not to take that and be able to help, to be able to grow something else and continue to really the goal is just to grow the industry and hopefully make it better. I hope people listen and see some of the things we're doing and implement that in their businesses, and I hope that we share and can implement things into my businesses too.
Well, as we kind of close the evening, John, I think it's important to reflect on something, and while La Flor Dominicana will never be the same without you, and again, that's I don't think that's necessarily a knock, but it's also a compliment at the same time, to the service that you gave and what you did for that brand and that family, for 15 years, for half of its existence, and you saw it through some of its darkest days and some of its highest peaks, and you had celebrations and you had challenges to overcome, and I, for one, as a fan of that brand, and as that without La Flor Dominicana I wouldn't be here today, because it was literally the reason that got me in the door. And I'm grateful for our friendship over the years, and I'm looking forward to celebrating 15 years down the road, and seeing what you build this next chapter into being. And I know it's going to be something great. So I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to the trade show, of course, seeing you then, and then of course checking in with you between now and then and as well too. So congratulations on 15 years of an amazing career with one company, and congratulations on the new chapter as well. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you as well to our audience for staying up late with us. You can always keep those likes, shares, and comments, keep them coming. If you are tuning in later, we'll get to that in just a second, but if you are on YouTube, you can always hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post up a new episode. But if you're listening to us wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure you download, subscribe, and review. Tonight's audio broadcast is always courtesy of Gran Habano Cigars. Honest, compassionate, great cigars. Be sure you download, subscribe, and review today. And I really do mean the review. And I want to thank the individual who gave me a 1-star and actually put feedback on there. So he commented that our audio levels are poor. So my apologies, but we are working on this. We're only 300 episodes into this. At one point, we will get this right. So, but I do appreciate the constructive feedback. It's much better than the 1-star review I did receive that had no feedback. He just thought I sucked. So good call. But I appreciate honesty, transparency. We talked a lot about that tonight. So be sure you download, subscribe.
There's something to learn from everything. So, hey, if there's something that's going on and that I'm doing you don't like, let me know. If I don't like it, then I'll just keep not liking it. If I disagree with you, I'll think you're wrong anyway. And by the way, in the worst case scenario, maybe you're right, and maybe we'll get better at it. I don't know, but yeah, keep it coming. It's all good.
Absolutely. In the words of my great father, opinions are like armpits. Everyone's got them and they all stink. So there you go. So we'll conclude on that note without further ado. This was our 303rd take. I'm Barry Duplessis, live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star studio. He's Jon Carney of Bentley Tobacco. And guess what, everybody? We'll see you next time.